The first time I saw the Whitmore family again, they were standing under a ceiling of crystal chandeliers, smiling like nothing ugly had ever touched them. The ballroom at the Langford Hotel in Manhattan looked like something out of a magazine. White roses climbed around golden arches. Champagne glasses sparkled under warm light. A string quartet played near the front of the room, soft and elegant, as if every note had been paid to pretend this family was perfect. And in the center of it all stood Margaret Whitmore, my former mother-in-law. She wore a silver designer gown, diamonds at her throat, and that same calm smile I remembered too well. The kind of smile that never reached her eyes. The kind of smile she used right before destroying someone. 5 years ago, that woman had watched me leave her mansion in the rain with my newborn son in my arms. 5 years ago, she had called me a liar, a cheater, and a disgrace. 5 years ago, she had held up a DNA test and told the world my baby did not belong to her son. And today, she was celebrating her daughter's wedding like she had never ruined a life. I stood at the entrance of the ballroom with my hand wrapped around my son's smaller one. Noah was 5 now. He had Ethan's dark blonde hair, Ethan's gray-blue eyes, and the same little crease between his eyebrows when he was confused. Sometimes, looking at him hurt so badly I had to turn away. Not because I regretted him, never that, but because every part of his face was proof of a truth no one had wanted to believe. "Mom," Noah whispered, tugging gently at my hand. "Are we supposed to be here?" I looked down at him and forced myself to smile. "Yes, sweetheart," I said softly. "We are." He adjusted the collar of his little navy suit. He looked nervous but brave. I had dressed him carefully that morning, buttoning his shirt with hands that trembled only when he wasn't looking. I had promised myself I would not cry today. Not in front of Margaret, not in front of Ethan, not in front of the people who had watched me be thrown away and decided silence was easier than truth. Across the ballroom, Olivia Whitmore laughed beside her bridesmaids. She was the bride, dressed in lace and pearls, glowing with the confidence of a woman who believed the world would always rearrange itself around her. 5 years ago, she had stood beside her mother and called me an embarrassment to the family. Now it was her perfect day, and I had walked straight into it carrying the one secret that could shatter everything. For a moment, no one noticed us. The guests were too busy admiring the flowers, the cake, the luxury, the performance of wealth. Then a woman near the entrance turned her head. Her smile faded. She whispered to the man beside her. Then he looked. Then someone else. The whispers spread faster than music. I felt the room begin to shift. One by one, faces turned toward me. Some recognized me immediately. Others stared at Noah first, then back at me, trying to connect the pieces. I heard someone murmur, "Is that Claire Bennett?" Another voice said, "I thought she disappeared." Then, quieter but sharper, "Is that her child?" My fingers tightened around Noah's hand. He leaned closer to me. "Mom, why is everyone looking at us?" Before I could answer, Ethan Whitmore turned around. For 5 years I had imagined that moment. I had imagined anger. I had imagined screaming. I had imagined myself demanding an apology he could never truly give. But what happened was worse. Ethan simply froze. His face changed as if someone had pulled all the air from his body. His champagne glass lowered slowly in his hand. His eyes moved from me to Noah, and the color drained from his face. He knew. Maybe not everything. Not yet. But some truths do not need paperwork. Some truths walk into a room wearing a navy suit and looking exactly like the man who abandoned them. Noah stared back at him with innocent curiosity. Then my son asked the question that silenced the room. "Mom," he whispered, though everyone seemed to hear it, "why does that man look like me?" The music did not stop, but it might as well have. Ethan's lips parted. He did not speak. He just stared at Noah like he was seeing a ghost from a life he had buried. Then Margaret saw us. For the first time in all the years I had known her, I watched her perfect expression crack. Only for a second, her smile disappeared. Her eyes widened. Her shoulders stiffened beneath the silver fabric of her gown. But Margaret Whitmore had built her entire life on control, and she recovered quickly. Too quickly. She crossed the ballroom with graceful, measured steps, the way a queen might approach a servant who had forgotten her place. "Claire," she said. My name sounded poisonous in her mouth. "Margaret," I replied. Her eyes flicked to Noah, then away, as if even looking at him was dangerous. "This is a private event," she said, her voice low enough that only those nearby could hear, but cold enough to cut through glass. "You need to leave." I looked around at the ballroom, at the guests pretending not to listen, at Olivia now staring at me with rage in her eyes, at Ethan still standing motionless near the front. Then I looked back at Margaret. I was invited. Her smile tightened. By whom? Before I could answer, a man's voice came from behind her. By me. Nathan Harris, Olivia's groom, stepped forward in his black tuxedo. He looked calm, but there was tension in his jaw. Beside him stood an older man with silver hair and serious eyes. Dr. Samuel Harris. The man who had once handled the DNA test that destroyed my marriage. Margaret looked from Nathan to Dr. Harris, and for the first time I saw something close to fear behind her eyes. Olivia rushed over, lifting the front of her wedding dress as she walked. "Nathan, what is going on?" she demanded. "Why is she here?" Nathan did not answer her right away. His eyes moved to Noah, then to Ethan. The room was almost completely silent now. Margaret's voice hardened. "This is inappropriate. Claire has no reason to be here. She is trying to create a scene." I let out a quiet breath. For 5 years I had carried the weight of that lie. I had carried it through sleepless nights, through rent payments I could barely afford, through Noah's questions about why he did not have a father at school events. I had carried it while Ethan lived in his family's mansion and Margaret continued hosting charity dinners about children and family values. But not anymore. I looked directly at Margaret and said, 5 years ago, you buried the truth under a fake DNA test. A wave of gasps moved through the guests. Margaret's face went pale. I took one step closer. Today, I continued, my voice steady. I came to let it breathe. Ethan finally moved. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice rough. I turned to him. For a second, the years disappeared. I saw the man who once held my hand in a hospital room and cried when our son was born. I saw the husband who promised he would protect me. I saw the coward who stood silent while his mother destroyed me. What I told you 5 years ago, I said, the truth. Ethan swallowed hard. Margaret snapped. Enough. But Dr. Harris stepped forward. No, Mrs. Whitmore, he said quietly. I think it's time we talked about the test. The words hit the room like a dropped match. Olivia looked between her groom and her mother. Test? She said. What test? Margaret turned sharply toward Dr. Harris. You have no right, she hissed. Dr. Ray. Harris did not flinch. I had every right the moment my signature was forged. The ballroom erupted into whispers. Ethan looked like he had been struck. Forged? He repeated. Margaret's hand trembled at her side, but only slightly. Most people would not have noticed. I did. I had learned to notice everything about that woman. Her silence, her smiles, her lies dressed up as concern. Noah pressed himself against my side. I put a hand on his shoulder. It's okay, I whispered, but it was not okay. Not yet. Because the truth was finally standing in the same room as the people who had buried it. And this time Margaret Whitmore could not simply order it out into the rain. The string quartet had stopped playing. No one was pretending anymore. At the front of the ballroom, beneath the white roses and golden lights, Ethan stared at Noah with tears beginning to gather in his eyes. Then he looked at me. Claire, he whispered. Is he? His voice broke before he could finish. I held his gaze. Yes, I said, he is your son. A sound escaped him, half breath, half grief. But I did not let myself soften. Not yet. Because he had asked the question 5 years too late, and before this night was over, everyone in that ballroom would know exactly why. 6 years earlier, before the fake DNA test, before the rain, before I learned how cruel silence could be, I believed love could protect me from anything. That was my first mistake. I met Ethan Whitmore on a cold Saturday afternoon at a children's charity event in Stamford, Connecticut. I was volunteering with a group of teachers from my school, helping kids pick out donated winter coats before the first real snow of the season. I remember standing near a folding table stacked with gloves and scarves when a little boy started crying because he could not find a coat in his size. I knelt in front of him and said, "Hey, it's okay. We're going to find something, I promise." The boy shook his head, wiping his face with the sleeve of his old sweatshirt. "My brother got blue," he whispered. I wanted blue too. I looked at the remaining coats. Most were black, gray, or brown. Then, at the bottom of a box, I spotted one navy blue coat with a hood. I pulled it out like I had discovered treasure. "How about this one?" I asked. His eyes lit up. Behind me, a man laughed softly, not in a mocking way, in a warm way. I turned around and saw Ethan for the first time. He was wearing a dark wool coat, standing slightly away from the group of donors in expensive suits. He looked like he belonged with them, but also like he wished he did not. "You just saved the day," he said. I smiled. It was a very serious coat emergency. He laughed again, and something about it made me feel comfortable immediately. That was Ethan's gift. He could make a room feel warmer just by standing in it. At least that was what I believed then. He introduced himself simply as Ethan, not Ethan Whitmore. Not the heir to the Whitmore real estate empire. Not the son of one of the most powerful families in Greenwich. Just Ethan. For the next hour, we worked side by side. He carried boxes. I helped children try on coats. He made terrible jokes. I pretended not to laugh at them. By the time the event ended, snow was beginning to fall outside the community center windows. He walked over to me while I was packing up. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "That depends," I replied. "Is it about another coat emergency?" "No," he said, smiling. "Coffee." I raised an eyebrow. "Coffee is not a question. It is if I'm asking whether you'll have one with me." I should have said no, not because he seemed dangerous. He didn't. But because men like Ethan usually came with worlds like the one I had spent my whole life standing outside of. Instead, I said yes. That one cup of coffee turned into dinner the next week. Dinner turned into walks after work, long phone calls, and Sundays spent wandering through bookstores and farmers markets. Ethan listened when I talked, really listened. When I told him about my students, he remembered their names. When I told him I had grown up in a small town in Ohio, raised by parents who worked hard and saved every dollar, he did not look down on it. He said it sounded honest. Honest. That word mattered to me, because in Ethan's world, almost everything felt polished, rehearsed, and expensive. But when he was with me, he seemed relieved to be ordinary. One night, after 3 months of dating, he took me to a small diner instead of one of the elegant restaurants his family preferred. We sat in a red vinyl booth near the window, sharing fries and laughing over milkshakes. "You know," he said, dipping a fry into ketchup, "my mother would hate this place." I smiled. "Why?" "She thinks restaurants should have cloth napkins and waiters who judge you silently." I laughed. Then he looked at me for a moment and his expression changed. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," he said softly. "I just like who I am when I'm with you." My heart did something foolish then. It believed him completely. A few weeks later, Ethan told me he wanted me to meet his family. I tried to act calm, but the truth was, I was terrified. Everyone in Connecticut knew the Whitmore name. Their family owned office towers, luxury apartments, hotels, and half of the properties people whispered about at charity events. They lived in a stone mansion in Greenwich with iron gates, private security, and a driveway longer than the street I had grown up on. I stood in front of my closet for almost an hour that evening, trying to choose a dress that said I was respectful but not desperate, simple but not cheap. In the end, I wore a cream-colored dress, low heels, and the pearl earrings my mother had given me when I graduated college. Ethan picked me up at 7. The moment I got into his car, he noticed my nervous hands. "Hey," he said, reaching over to squeeze my fingers. "You don't have to be scared." "I'm not scared," I lied. He smiled. "Claire," I exhaled. "Okay, maybe a little." "My mother can be difficult," he admitted, "but she'll see what I see." "What do you see?" He looked at me like the answer was obvious. "The woman I love." I wanted to believe that would be enough. When we pulled through the gates of the Whitmore estate, I understood immediately that I was entering a place built to intimidate people. The mansion rose at the end of the driveway like something from another century, all pale stone, tall windows, and perfect symmetry. The lawn looked too perfect to be real. Lights glowed inside every window. A fountain whispered in the center of the circular drive. I stared at it through the windshield. Ethan noticed. "It's just a house," he said. But it was not just a house. It was a warning. A man in a black suit opened my car door before I could reach for the handle. Inside, the foyer smelled like lilies, polished wood, and old money. A crystal chandelier hung above us. My heels clicked against marble floors so shiny I could see my reflection in them. Then Margaret Whitmore appeared at the top of the staircase. She did not hurry. Women like Margaret never hurried. They made the world wait for them. She was elegant in a navy silk dress, her silver blonde hair swept into a perfect twist. Diamonds glittered at her ears. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, her smile controlled, so controlled it barely looked human. "Ethan," she said, descending the stairs. "You're late." 3 minutes, he replied. "In this family, 3 minutes still counts." Then her eyes moved to me. Not warmly, not curiously, like I was an object being assessed for flaws. "You must be Claire." I stepped forward and offered my hand. "Mrs. Whitmore, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for having me." Her hand touched mine only briefly. "Margaret," she said, "Mrs. Whitmore makes me sound old." It should have been a joke. It was not. At dinner, I met Olivia. She was 21 then, home from college for the weekend, with glossy hair, sharp eyes, and the careless confidence of someone who had never wondered whether she belonged in a room. She looked me up and down before smiling. "So you're the teacher," she said. I nodded. "Elementary school." "That's sweet," Olivia replied. The word sounded small in her mouth. Sweet, not impressive, not respectable, not enough. We sat down at a long dining table that could have held 20 people, though there were only 4 of us. A maid served soup in white bowls rimmed with gold. I tried to remember which spoon to use first. Margaret noticed. Of course she did. "So, Claire," she said, lifting her wine glass, "Ethan tells me you're from Ohio." "Yes," I said, "a small town outside Columbus." "How different Greenwich must feel." Her tone was pleasant. The insult was not. I smiled carefully. "It is different, but beautiful." Margaret tilted her head. "Beauty can be difficult to maintain. Some people don't realize that until they're responsible for it." Ethan shifted beside me. "Mom?" "What?" Margaret asked innocently. "I'm only making conversation." But she was not making conversation. She was drawing borders. She asked about my parents next. My father had managed a hardware store. My mother had worked as a receptionist at a dental office. They were good people, hard-working people, people who taught me that kindness mattered more than status. Margaret listened with the polite expression of someone hearing about a neighborhood she would never visit. "And neither of them are in business?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not in the way you mean." Olivia smiled into her water glass. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Ethan reached for my hand under the table. For a moment I thought he would say something, defend me, change the direction of the conversation. Instead, he squeezed my fingers gently and said nothing. It was a small silence. So small I forgave it immediately. Later, after dinner, Ethan showed me the garden behind the house. The night air was cold and the windows of the mansion glowed behind us. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "My mother." I wrapped my arms around myself. "She doesn't like me. She doesn't know you. There's a difference?" He looked pained. "Claire, she's protective. She has this idea of what my life is supposed to look like. And I don't fit." He stepped closer. "You fit with me." That should have comforted me. At the time, it did. He kissed me beneath a bare winter tree, and I let myself believe the warmth of his hands could shield me from the coldness inside that house. Before I left that night, Margaret walked me to the door. Ethan had gone to get my coat. For the first time all evening, we were alone. Margaret looked at me with that perfect icy smile. "Claire," she said, "you seem like a nice girl." I already knew nothing good would follow those words. "Thank you," I said. "But you should understand something about families like ours. We are not easy to enter, and we are even harder to remain in." My throat tightened. "I care about Ethan." "I'm sure you do," she replied. "But caring about someone and belonging beside them are very different things." I stood there, unable to speak. Then Ethan returned with my coat, and Margaret's smile warmed instantly like someone had turned on a light. "Drive safely," she said. In the car, Ethan asked, "Everything okay?" I looked back at the mansion disappearing behind us. I thought about telling him what she had said. I thought about asking him whether he would really choose me if his mother forced him to. But love makes you foolish in gentle ways before it breaks you in brutal ones. So I smiled and said, "Everything's fine." Ethan believed me because he wanted to, and I believed him for the same reason. Months later, when he proposed to me in the middle of a quiet park after the first snow of the year, I said yes with tears in my eyes. He slipped the ring onto my finger and whispered, "I promise I'll always protect you." I held his face in my hands and whispered back, "Then I'm not afraid." But somewhere in Greenwich, inside that stone mansion, Margaret Whitmore was already planning how to remove me. She did not shout, she did not threaten, she simply waited. Because women like Margaret did not need to fight loudly. They knew how to smile while sharpening the knife. Our wedding was beautiful. That was what everyone said. Beautiful flowers, beautiful dress, beautiful church, beautiful bride, beautiful Whitmore tradition. No one said happy, maybe because happiness is harder to fake than beauty. We were married on a warm spring afternoon in Greenwich, inside a historic church with stained glass windows and white roses tied to every pew. The ceremony was elegant, tasteful, and exactly what Margaret Whitmore wanted people to see. She had taken over nearly every detail: the guest list, the menu, the flowers, the seating chart, even my dress. When I first showed her the simple gown I had chosen with my mother, Margaret smiled in that gentle, poisonous way of hers and said, "It's sweet, Claire, but you're marrying into the Whitmore family. People will expect something more appropriate." Appropriate. That word followed me everywhere. An appropriate dress, appropriate posture, appropriate conversation, appropriate friends, appropriate silence. By the time I walked down the aisle wearing a designer gown Margaret had selected and paid for, I barely recognized myself. But then I saw Ethan waiting for me at the altar. His eyes filled with tears. For one brief, foolish moment, everything else disappeared. Margaret's control, Olivia's smirks, the whispers from guests who knew more about my husband's family fortune than they knew about me. All I saw was Ethan. He took my hands and whispered, "You look beautiful." I wanted to ask him, "Do I look like me?" But I smiled instead. Because I loved him. Because I believed marriage would finally make me part of his family. Because I still did not understand that Margaret had never planned to accept me. She had only planned to manage me. After the honeymoon, Ethan and I moved into the east wing of the Whitmore mansion. He called it practical. "It's only temporary," he told me while we unpacked. "The company is expanding and I'll be working late. This way we can save time, save money, and be close to family." I looked around the enormous bedroom with its antique furniture, silk curtains, and fireplace carved from white marble. "Ethan," I said softly, "your idea of saving money is very different from mine." He laughed and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Give it a year," he said. "Then we'll buy our own place, I promise." A year, that was what he said. But promises inside the Whitmore house had a way of becoming decorations, beautiful to look at, easy to forget. At first I tried. I truly tried. I woke up early every morning, even when I did not need to. I learned the names of the staff. I wrote thank you notes after dinners. I smiled at Margaret's friends when they asked questions that sounded polite but felt like inspections. "So, Claire, do you plan to continue teaching?" How interesting that Ethan married someone outside the usual circle. "Do your parents visit Greenwich often?" Every question had a hook hidden inside it. Margaret taught me the rules without ever admitting there were rules. At breakfast, she corrected how much cream I put in my coffee. At charity luncheons, "Less is more," she said, watching my hand. People notice small habits. At dinner, she corrected the way I spoke about my students. "It's lovely that you care, Claire, but people don't want sad stories at the table." Before events, she sent dresses to my room without asking. "I thought this would be more flattering," the note would say. More flattering, more suitable, more Whitmore. Little by little, the house began swallowing pieces of me. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs wearing jeans and an old college sweatshirt, planning to stop by the school and organize my classroom. Margaret was in the foyer, arranging white lilies in a vase. Her eyes moved over me. "You're going out like that?" I looked down at myself. "I'm just going to school." "Yes," she said, "and people know who you are now." I almost laughed. "I'm a teacher, Margaret, not a senator." "You are Ethan's wife," she replied. "That means you represent this family whether you enjoy the responsibility or not." I stood there with my car keys in my hand, feeling like a child being scolded. Then Olivia came down the stairs, sunglasses pushed up on her head. "Oh, Claire," she said with a small laugh, "you look so normal." The word hit harder than it should have. Normal. As if normal were something embarrassing. I changed before leaving. I told myself it was easier. That became my excuse for almost everything. It was easier not to argue, easier not to tell Ethan every cruel comment, easier not to explain why I felt lonely in a house full of people, easier not to admit that my marriage was beginning to feel like a room with no door. Ethan was busy. That was another thing I told myself. The Whitmore Group was expanding into luxury hotels in New York, and Ethan was being prepared to take over more responsibility. He left early, came home late, took calls during dinner, and fell asleep with his laptop still open. When he did notice I was quiet, he would kiss my forehead and say, "I'm sorry, it won't always be like this." I wanted to believe him. One night, after Margaret had embarrassed me in front of 6 dinner guests by correcting how I pronounced the name of a French wine, I waited until Ethan came upstairs. He loosened his tie and smiled tiredly. "Long night," he said. I sat on the edge of the bed. "Your mother humiliated me tonight." His smile faded. "What happened?" "You heard her," he sighed. "Claire," my stomach tightened. I already knew that tone. "She was just trying to help," he said. "Help?" I repeated. "She corrected me like I was a child." She cares about how people see this family. And what about how I feel? He rubbed his face with both hands. I know she can be hard, but you take everything so personally. I stared at him. Personally, as if I should experience my own humiliation from a distance. I am a person, Ethan, I said quietly. So yes, I take it personally. He looked guilty, but guilt was not the same as courage. I just don't want every dinner to become a fight, he said, then tell her to stop. He was silent. That silence became the fifth person in our marriage. Me, Ethan, Margaret, Olivia, and Ethan's silence. It sat between us at breakfast. It followed us into the car. It stood beside me at parties when Margaret introduced me as Ethan's wife, but rarely used my name. Slowly, I began to shrink. I stopped inviting my friends over because Olivia once called them cute little teacher friends. I stopped calling my mother from the common rooms because Margaret always seemed to appear nearby, listening without listening. I stopped wearing colors I liked because Margaret preferred classic tones. One afternoon, I found my old cream wedding dress hanging in the back of the closet at my parents' house during a visit. The dress I had chosen, the one I had not worn. I touched the fabric and cried so quietly my mother did not hear me from the kitchen. When I returned to Greenwich that evening, Margaret was waiting in the sitting room. Your mother called, she said. I froze. Why? She wanted to confirm Thanksgiving plans. I frowned. She could have called me. She did. You didn't answer. I was driving. Margaret folded her hands in her lap. I told her this year would be difficult. The Whitmores host Thanksgiving. It's a tradition. I felt something inside me snap just a little. You told my mother I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving. I told her you have obligations now. My family is not an obligation I outgrew. Margaret's eyes hardened. No, but you are married now. You cannot keep one foot in your old life and expect to succeed in this one. My old life. The phrase stayed with me, as if love, family, and the people who raised me were embarrassing luggage I had dragged into her perfect house. That night, I told Ethan. For once I expected him to be angry. He was. Just not enough. I'll talk to her, he said. When? Soon. Ethan, she called my mother and uninvited me from Thanksgiving. I said I'll handle it, but he did not handle it. Instead, a few days later, he came home with flowers. Not an apology. Flowers. I thought these might cheer you up, he said. I looked at the bouquet in his hand and realized something terrifying. Ethan did not want to solve the problem. He wanted me to stop being hurt by it. Still, there were moments when I saw the man I had married. On quiet nights when Margaret was asleep and the house finally stopped watching me, Ethan would hold me close and whisper that he loved me. Sometimes we would sneak into the kitchen after midnight and eat ice cream straight from the carton like teenagers. In those moments, I let myself forget. I forgot Margaret's cold eyes. I forgot Olivia's laughter. I forgot how often Ethan chose peace over me. Then morning would come, and the house would remember for both of us. The first time I realized Margaret wanted me gone was at a charity gala in Manhattan. I was standing near a table of donors, trying to make conversation with a woman named Patricia Caldwell, who had known the Whitmores for years. Patricia looked at me with a thin smile and said, Margaret tells me you're still teaching. Still? I asked. She laughed lightly. Oh, don't misunderstand. I think it's admirable. Most women in your position would focus on supporting their husband's public role. My position. I looked across the room at Margaret. She was watching me. Not directly. She never did anything directly, but she saw everything. Later that evening, I overheard her speaking to Olivia near the hallway. She doesn't understand what this family requires, Margaret said. Olivia replied, Ethan will get tired of defending her eventually. Margaret gave a quiet laugh. He already has. I stood hidden behind a marble column, unable to breathe, because the worst part was not their cruelty. The worst part was that I knew Margaret was right. Ethan was tired. Not of loving me, not yet, but of choosing me. And those were not the same thing. That night in the car, Ethan asked why I was so quiet. I looked at his profile as he drove, the soft blue light of the dashboard cutting across his face. Do you ever regret marrying me? I asked. He turned to me quickly. What? No. Claire, no. Then why does it feel like I'm the only one fighting for this marriage? His jaw tightened. That's not fair. Isn't it? I'm under a lot of pressure. So am I. He pulled into the driveway of the mansion and parked, but neither of us got out. The house loomed in front of us, every window glowing. I need you to be patient, he said. I have been patient. With her. No, Ethan, I said, my voice breaking. With you. He looked down at his hands. Again, silence. I turned toward the mansion and understood something I had been trying not to see. Margaret did not need to break our marriage all at once. She only needed to teach Ethan that defending me was exhausting, and she was very good at teaching. A month later, I found out I was pregnant. I was alone in our bathroom when the test turned positive. For a few seconds, I could not move. Then I sat down on the cold tile floor, one hand over my mouth, the other resting against my stomach. A baby. Our baby. For the first time in months, hope rose inside me so suddenly it almost hurt. Maybe this would change everything. Maybe Ethan would finally stand firmly beside me. Maybe Margaret would soften when she became a grandmother. Maybe the house that had felt like a cage could become a home. When Ethan came home that evening, I was waiting in the bedroom, the test hidden in a small white box. He opened it and stared. Then he looked at me. Claire, he whispered, are you serious? I nodded, tears already falling. He crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled me into his arms. He laughed and cried at the same time, burying his face in my hair. We're having a baby, he said. Oh my God, we're having a baby. For that one night, I believed we were safe. Ethan held me like I was precious. He knelt in front of me and kissed my stomach, even though there was nothing to see yet. He promised our child would grow up loved. He promised he would be better. He promised we would find our own house before the baby came. So many promises. The next morning, we told Margaret. She was sitting in the sunroom with her tea, dressed in pale gray, reading a stack of invitations. Ethan could barely contain himself. "Mom," he said, smiling like a boy, "Claire's pregnant." Margaret's hand stopped halfway to her teacup. For a fraction of a second, something flashed across her face. Not joy, not surprise, fear. Then it was gone. She stood and embraced Ethan first. "My darling," she said, "that's wonderful news." Then she turned to me. Her arms went around me lightly, barely touching. "How lovely," she said near my ear, but her voice was cold enough to raise goosebumps on my skin. When she pulled away, her smile was perfect again. "We'll have to be very careful now," she said. Ethan laughed. "Careful?" Margaret looked at me. "Yes," she said, "very careful." I did not understand what she meant then. I thought she was talking about doctors, vitamins, rest, the baby's health. I did not know she was already thinking about inheritance, about bloodlines, about how a child would tie me to the Whitmore family forever. And Margaret Whitmore would rather destroy the truth than allow that to happen. Pregnancy changed the Whitmore house, but not in the way I had hoped. At first, Ethan was different. For a few weeks, he became the man I had married again. He came home earlier. He canceled late meetings. He brought me ginger tea when morning sickness left me curled up on the bathroom floor. He read articles about pregnancy on his phone and sent me ridiculous lists of baby names during lunch. "What do you think about Oliver?" he asked one night, lying beside me in bed. I wrinkled my nose. "Too serious. Henry? Too royal. Jack? Too many Jacks." He laughed and placed one hand gently on my stomach. "There's no winning with you." "There is," I said. "You just have to pick the perfect name." "The perfect name," he repeated. "No pressure." For the first time in a long time, the mansion did not feel so cold. Ethan started talking about buying a house of our own again. A real house, not a wing inside his mother's mansion. He promised we would find a place with a backyard, a sunny kitchen, and a nursery painted in soft colors. "You, me, and the baby," he said. "That's what matters." I wanted to believe him so badly that I ignored the way Margaret watched us from across the room. She did not argue with Ethan. She did not tell him no. Margaret was too clever for that. Instead, she became helpful, dangerously helpful. She scheduled appointments with an expensive obstetrician in Manhattan without asking me first. She sent prenatal vitamins from a private wellness clinic. She had a decorator bring fabric samples for the nursery, even though Ethan and I had not decided where we would live after the baby was born. One afternoon, I found 3 women standing in the room Margaret had chosen for the nursery, measuring the windows and discussing wallpaper. I stopped in the doorway. "What's going on?" The decorator turned with a smile. "Mrs. Whitmore asked us to prepare options for the baby's room." I looked at Margaret, who stood near the window in a cream blazer, perfectly calm. "We haven't decided on a room," I said. Margaret smiled. "The East Nursery has always been used for Whitmore children." Whitmore children. The words landed carefully. Not my child. Not our child. A Whitmore child. I placed a hand over my stomach. "Ethan and I are still planning to move before the baby comes." Margaret's expression did not change, but the air did. "Pregnancy is not the time for instability, Claire. Having our own home isn't instability. It is if you mistake independence for wisdom." I felt my face warm. The decorator lowered her measuring tape and pretended to study the floor. Margaret stepped closer. "You are carrying a child who will be part of this family's legacy. That comes with responsibilities." "I'm carrying my baby," I said, "not a legacy." For the first time, Margaret's smile disappeared, only for a second, then it returned, thinner than before. "How modern of you." That night, I told Ethan what happened. He listened quietly while removing his cufflinks at the dresser. When I finished, he sighed. "I know she can be intense." "Intense?" I repeated. "Ethan, she's already claiming the baby." "She's excited." "No, she's controlling." He turned around, tiredness pulling at his face. "Claire, please, she's trying to help." I almost laughed, but there was no humor in me. "Every time she hurts me, you call it help." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "No, what isn't fair is living in a house where I have to defend my own child before he's even born." "He?" Ethan asked, his face softening. I looked away. "I don't know, I just said it. But something in me already knew. A boy, a son. A child who would carry Ethan's eyes, Ethan's blood, and Ethan's name. And maybe Margaret knew it too." After that day, her kindness became sharper. She began inviting me to lunches with women from her social circle. At each one, she placed me on display like a fragile decoration she had not chosen but was forced to keep. The women smiled at me over salads they barely touched. "How far along are you now? Are you hoping for a boy?" Margaret must be thrilled. A grandchild changes everything. Margaret would smile and say, "Yes, it certainly does." Every time she said it, I felt like she was not talking about joy. She was talking about strategy. Then came the first ultrasound. Ethan drove me to the appointment himself. He held my hand in the waiting room and looked more nervous than I felt. When the technician turned the monitor toward us, the room seemed to disappear. There was our baby. Small, real, moving. A tiny heartbeat filled the room, fast and strong. Ethan covered his mouth with one hand. "Oh my God," he whispered. I started crying before I could stop myself. The technician smiled. "Everything looks good so far." Ethan leaned down and kissed my forehead. "Hi, baby," he said softly, his voice breaking. "It's your dad." I closed my eyes. For that moment there was no Margaret, no mansion, no judgment, no fear, only us, only our baby. But later that evening, when we returned home, Margaret was waiting in the sitting room. "Well?" she asked. Ethan held up the ultrasound picture like a proud little boy. "Healthy," he said. "Strong heartbeat." Margaret took the photo from his hand. Her face softened for the first time, but not toward me. Toward the image, toward the idea, toward the bloodline she believed she owned. "Remarkable," she murmured. Then she looked at me. "And the doctor is certain everything is progressing normally?" "Yes," I said. "No complications?" "No. No unusual concerns?" I frowned. "No, Margaret, the baby is healthy." She handed the photo back to Ethan. "Good," she said. "Then we must make sure nothing threatens that." I did not understand the warning until later. A few days after the ultrasound, I noticed a black SUV parked near the school where I worked. At first I thought nothing of it. Parents parked outside all the time. Delivery drivers came and went. The street was busy. But then I saw the same SUV again the next day, and the next. Always across the street, always with tinted windows. I mentioned it to Ethan one evening. "There's this car outside the school," I said. "It's probably nothing, but it's been there 3 days in a row." Ethan looked up from his laptop. "What kind of car?" "Black SUV, tinted windows." He frowned. "Did you get the plate?" "No, I'll have security check around the area." "Security?" I asked. "Ethan, I don't need security. I just thought it was strange." "You're pregnant," he said. "I don't want to take chances." His concern should have comforted me. But something about it felt wrong. A week later, I learned why. I was leaving a coffee shop near school with Mark Reynolds, another teacher from my grade level. Mark was kind, married, and exhausted because one of our students was struggling badly at home. We had met for 20 minutes after work to discuss how to help the child without embarrassing him in front of the class. That was all. 20 minutes. 2 coffees. A conversation about a student. When we stepped outside, Mark held the door open for me. I thanked him. He said something funny about surviving parent-teacher conferences, and I laughed. Then, across the street, I saw a flash. Small, quick, like sunlight bouncing off glass. I turned my head. The black SUV was parked by the curb. My stomach dropped. Mark noticed my expression. "Claire? You okay?" I forced myself to breathe. "Yes," I said. "I'm fine." But I was not fine. That night, I confronted Margaret. I found her in the library, sitting beneath a portrait of Ethan's father, reading a leather-bound book she probably had no interest in. "Are you having me followed?" I asked. She looked up slowly. No surprise, no confusion, just mild annoyance, as if I had interrupted her at an inconvenient time. "Excuse me? The black SUV outside my school, the one near the coffee shop today." Margaret closed the book. "You are pregnant with a Whitmore child. We take safety seriously." "Don't lie to me." Her eyebrows lifted. "There it is," she said softly. "There what is? That temper you try so hard to hide." I stepped farther into the room. "You had someone take pictures of me. If you behave appropriately, photographs should not concern you." My hands curled into fists at my sides. "I met a coworker for coffee. A male coworker. A married coworker. We were talking about a student." Margaret stood. The room suddenly felt smaller. "Claire, you may have grown up in a world where appearances did not matter, but in this family, they do. I'm not doing anything wrong. Wrong is not always the issue. Perception is." "No," I said. "Control is." Her eyes sharpened. For a moment, we simply stared at each other. Then Margaret walked closer and lowered her voice. "You think carrying Ethan's child makes you untouchable?" The words chilled me. "I never said that." "You didn't have to." I felt the baby move, or maybe I imagined it. Either way, my hand went instinctively to my stomach. Margaret noticed. Her gaze followed the movement. "That child will be a Whitmore," she said, "and I will not allow you to use it as a weapon." My voice came out shaking. "I love Ethan. I love this baby. I'm not using anyone." Women say many things when they want security. I stared at her. At that moment, I finally understood. This was not dislike. This was not classism. This was not a difficult mother-in-law testing boundaries. Margaret believed I was an intruder, and now, because of the baby, she believed I was dangerous. "You will not take this child from me," I said. She smiled then, a cold, quiet smile. "Claire," she said, "you are very young. You still think motherhood gives you power." She walked past me toward the door. Just before leaving, she stopped. "But power belongs to the person others believe." Then she was gone. I stood in the library shaking, not because she had threatened me openly. She had not. That was the terrifying part. Margaret never needed to say exactly what she planned to do. She only needed me to know she was planning something. After that night, I begged Ethan to move out. I waited until we were alone in our bedroom. "Please," I said, "before the baby comes. I can't raise a child here." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his eyes. "We've talked about this." "No, you've delayed this. That's not fair." "Stop saying that every time I ask you to choose me." He looked hurt. "I am choosing you. You're choosing comfort. You're choosing not to upset her." His voice rose slightly. "She's my mother, and I'm your wife." The room went silent. For the first time, Ethan looked angry. Not cruel, not cold, just cornered. "You think this is easy for me?" he asked. "I'm trying to keep this family together." I placed both hands over my stomach. "This is your family." His face changed. Guilt flickered there. Then fear. He came to me and held my hands. "I know," he said softly. "I know, I'm sorry." "Then move out with me." He hesitated. 1 second, 2, 3. That was all the answer I needed. I pulled my hands away. Ethan whispered, "After the baby is born, I promise." Another promise. Another decoration. Margaret did not wait until the baby was born to make her next move. She began speaking to Ethan when I was not around. At first, I only caught pieces. A low voice behind a closed study door. A conversation that stopped when I entered a room. Ethan looking troubled at dinner. Then one evening, I heard her clearly. I had come downstairs for water, barefoot and tired, one hand on my aching back. The study door was open just enough for their voices to carry into the hallway. Margaret said, "I am not accusing her of anything. I am telling you to be careful." Ethan sounded frustrated. "Mom, stop. You saw the photographs. They prove nothing. They prove she is careless. She had coffee with a coworker, a man. Claire is not like that." Margaret paused, then her voice softened. That was when she was most dangerous. "Ethan, I know you love her. That is exactly why you may not be seeing clearly." I held my breath. "She got pregnant very quickly after the wedding," Margaret continued. "She knows what a child means in this family." "That's enough." "Is it? Because if you are wrong, the consequences will follow you for the rest of your life." My heart began pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. Ethan did not answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower. "What are you suggesting?" Margaret said. "Only certainty." I backed away from the door before I could hear more. Only certainty. The words followed me upstairs. They sat beside me in bed long after Ethan returned and pretended everything was normal. The next morning he was gentle with me. Too gentle. He made breakfast. He asked how I slept. He kissed my shoulder while I stood at the kitchen counter. But his eyes were different. Not cold. Not yet. Just uncertain. And uncertainty, once Margaret planted it, grew like mold in the walls. Weeks passed. My belly grew. The baby kicked harder. Ethan smiled when he felt it, but sometimes I caught him looking at me with a question he was ashamed to ask. Each time I felt something inside me break a little more. At my next appointment, the doctor told us the baby was a boy. Ethan cried. I cried too. Even Margaret's eyes shimmered when Ethan told her. "A son," she whispered. Then she excused herself and left the room. I watched her go. For one foolish moment I thought she might be emotional. Later I passed her office and saw her standing by the window, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low. "Yes," she said, "a boy." Then a pause. "I need options, quiet ones." I stopped walking. My blood turned cold. Margaret continued. "No, not now. After the birth, it has to look clean." I stepped back before the floor could creak beneath me. That night I barely slept. Ethan's arm rested around me, warm and heavy, once that would have made me feel safe. Now I stared into the darkness and wondered whether safety had ever truly existed in this house. The next morning, Margaret behaved as if nothing had happened. She asked if I preferred blue or ivory for the nursery. She ordered tea. She smiled. And I realized the most dangerous thing about Margaret Whitmore was not that she hated me. It was that she could hate me patiently. She could wait. She could plan. She could sit across from me at breakfast, compliment my pregnancy glow, and already be preparing the lie that would take my son's father away from him. I did not know the exact shape of her plan yet. I only knew it was coming. And I knew, deep in my bones, that once Margaret Whitmore decided someone did not belong in her family, she did not simply push them out. She erased them. Noah was born during a thunderstorm. I remember that more clearly than anything else. The rain hit the hospital windows in hard silver lines. Thunder rolled somewhere above Manhattan, low and angry, like the sky itself had come to witness what was about to happen. I had been in labor for 14 hours. By the end, I was exhausted, shaking and gripping Ethan's hand so tightly that his knuckles had gone white. "You're doing great," he kept saying. I wanted to believe him, but all I could do was breathe through the pain and focus on the sound of his voice. For once, Margaret was not in the room. She had tried to be. Of course she had. When we arrived at the hospital, she appeared 20 minutes later in a tailored coat, her hair perfect despite the storm, carrying a leather bag and a face full of authority. "I'll stay with you," she said, as if it had already been decided. I was bent over the bed, one hand on my stomach, trying not to cry. "No," I said. Margaret blinked. It was such a small word, but in that room it felt like rebellion. Ethan looked between us. "Mom, maybe you should wait outside." Margaret's jaw tightened. "I am his mother. And I'm the one giving birth," I said through another contraction. For a moment I thought she would argue, but a nurse stepped in, calm and firm. "Only 2 support people are allowed, and the patient gets to decide." Patient, not daughter-in-law, not wife of Ethan Whitmore, not carrier of the next Whitmore child. Patient. For once, the rules did not belong to Margaret. She smiled at the nurse with cold politeness, then looked at me. "Of course," she said, "whatever makes Claire comfortable." But the look in her eyes said something else. "You will pay for this." Hours later, when Noah finally came into the world, everything stopped. The pain, the fear, the tension, all of it disappeared the moment I heard him cry. A sharp, furious little cry that filled the room and split my life into before and after. The nurse placed him on my chest, warm and tiny and impossibly real. My son. My baby. Noah. His skin was pink from crying, his fists curled tight, his mouth open in protest at being born into such a loud, complicated world. I touched his cheek with one trembling finger. "Hi," I whispered. "Hi, my love." Ethan was crying beside me. Not quietly, not politely. He was crying like something inside him had broken open. "He's perfect," he said. I looked up at him, tears blurring my vision. "He is." Ethan leaned down and kissed my forehead, then Noah's. "Our son," he whispered. "Our son." Those 2 words wrapped around me like warmth. For a little while, I let myself forget everything else. I forgot Margaret's threats. I forgot the black SUV. I forgot the phone call about quiet options. I forgot every cold dinner, every careful insult, every moment Ethan had failed to defend me. Because when he held Noah for the first time, his entire face changed. He looked terrified. He looked in love. He looked like a father. Noah stopped crying in his arms. Ethan laughed softly, staring down at him. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "I'm your dad." I closed my eyes. I wanted that moment to last forever, but forever lasted less than an hour. Margaret entered the room after the nurses cleaned Noah and checked on me. She came in slowly, carrying white roses and wearing the expression of a woman attending a ceremony, not visiting a newborn. Olivia was behind her, holding her phone. "Oh my God," Olivia said, stepping closer. "He's tiny." "He's a newborn," I said. She ignored me and leaned over Ethan's arms. Margaret did not speak at first. She looked at Noah, really looked at him. His tiny nose, his closed eyes, his dark blonde fuzz of hair, the crease between his eyebrows. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, fear. Then she buried it. "May I?" she asked. Ethan looked at me. For a second I wanted to say no, but I was tired, too tired to fight. I nodded. Ethan placed Noah carefully into Margaret's arms. She held him correctly, confidently, the way someone does when they have held babies before. But there was no softness in her. She examined him like he was a document she did not trust. "He has Ethan's hair," Olivia said. Margaret's eyes sharpened. "Newborns change," she replied. Ethan smiled. "Mom, come on, look at him." "I am looking." The room went quiet. Too quiet. I watched Margaret's face. For 5 seconds, maybe 10, she stared at Noah as if trying to make him into something else by force of will. Then she handed him back to Ethan. "He's healthy," she said. "That's what matters." But that was not what she meant. Nothing was ever just what Margaret said. The first few days after Noah's birth were a blur of feedings, nurses, pain, and sleepless wonder. Ethan stayed close. He changed diapers badly. He learned how to swaddle. He took dozens of pictures and sent them to people I barely knew. For a moment, I thought fatherhood had saved him. I thought Noah had given Ethan the courage marriage never had. When Margaret visited, Ethan became careful but not distant. He still held Noah, still kissed him, still called him my boy. My boy. Every time he said it, Margaret's mouth tightened. On the day we brought Noah home to the Whitmore mansion, the rain had stopped. The sky was pale and clean, and sunlight reflected off the wet driveway. The staff had placed flowers everywhere, white lilies in the foyer, blue hydrangeas in the sitting room, a silver rattle engraved with Noah's initials waiting in the nursery. Margaret had decorated without my permission. NBW Noah Bennett Whitmore. I stared at the engraved letters. Bennett was my family name. Whitmore was Ethan's. Together they looked like a bridge, but in that house, bridges could become battlegrounds. Margaret hosted a small family dinner that night, even though I had given birth only 2 days earlier and could barely sit upright. "Just immediate family," she said. Immediate family meant 8 people, formal clothes, wine I could not drink, and a dining room where I felt like I was bleeding through a smile. Noah slept in a bassinet near my chair. Every few minutes, Ethan looked down at him with pride. "He makes this little face when he's about to sneeze," Ethan told everyone, "exactly like I did when I was a baby. Right, Mom?" Margaret lifted her glass. "Perhaps." Ethan frowned slightly. Olivia leaned back in her chair and studied Noah. "I mean, babies all kind of look the same at first." "They do not," Ethan said, laughing. "Look at him." Margaret placed her glass down. "Ethan," she said, "do not become sentimental to the point of blindness." The table went still. I looked up. "What does that mean?" I asked. Margaret met my eyes across the table. "It means new fathers often see what they want to see." Ethan stiffened. "Mom, I'm only saying emotion can cloud judgment." My heart began to pound. I knew where this was going before she said another word. Because Margaret did not drop bombs. She placed them gently in the center of the room and waited for someone else to step on them. Ethan forced a laugh. "It's been 2 days. Can we not do this?" "Do what?" Margaret asked. I pushed my chair back slowly. "I'm going to take Noah upstairs." Ethan looked at me. "Claire?" "No," I said softly. "I'm tired." I lifted my son from the bassinet and walked out of the dining room with every eye on my back. Upstairs in the nursery, I sat in the rocking chair and held Noah against my chest. His tiny breaths warmed my skin. "I'm sorry," I whispered to him. "I'm so sorry." I did not know exactly what I was apologizing for bringing him into that house, for believing love could make people decent, for not leaving sooner. Ethan came upstairs 15 minutes later. He found me in the dark nursery rocking Noah. "Claire," he said quietly from the doorway. I did not look at him. "What did she mean?" he sighed. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." He came into the room and sat on the small ottoman across from me. "She's just concerned." I finally looked at him. "About what?" He rubbed his hands together. "About the photos." My blood went cold. "The coffee shop?" "She thinks people could misunderstand." "People," I repeated. "Or her." He did not answer. I laughed once bitterly. "Mark is married. He's my co-worker. We were talking about a student." "I know. Do you?" His head lifted. "Of course I do." "Then why are we having this conversation 2 days after I gave birth to your son?" He flinched. I wanted him to deny it. Loudly, angrily, fully. I wanted him to say, "This is ridiculous. I trust you. I trust us." Instead, he said the sentence that opened the door to everything Margaret wanted. "I just think we should put the questions to rest." For a moment, I did not understand. Then I did. My arms tightened around Noah. "What questions?" "Claire." "No. Say it." He looked miserable. "That's not what I mean." "Then say what you mean." He stood up and walked toward the window. Outside, the estate lights glowed across the lawn. Maybe a DNA test would just end this. The room disappeared around me. All I could hear was Noah breathing, soft, innocent, unaware that his own father had just placed a question mark over his existence. "A DNA test," I repeated. Ethan turned back. "Just to shut her up." "To shut her up," my voice shook. "Or to satisfy you." His face tightened. "That's not fair." I stood carefully, holding Noah close. "Stop saying that to me. I'm not accusing you." Yes, you are. You're just too cowardly to use the words. Pain flashed across his face. I'm trying to protect us. No, I said, you're trying to protect yourself from choosing between your wife and your mother. He stepped close. Claire, please, if the test proves what we already know, she'll have nothing left to say. I stared at him. That was the tragedy of Ethan. He still believed facts mattered to Margaret. He thought proof could end cruelty. He did not understand that cruelty only used proof when it was convenient. I looked down at Noah. My son's face was pressed against my chest. His mouth moved slightly in his sleep. I loved him so much it hurt. Then I looked back at Ethan. If I agree to this, I said, it is not because I have anything to prove. It is because one day when Noah asks me what happened, I want to be able to say I did everything I could to save his family. Ethan swallowed hard. Claire. But listen to me carefully, I said. The moment you asked for this test, something between us broke, even if you pretend it didn't. His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I wanted his apology to matter. It did not. The test was scheduled 3 days later. Margaret arranged everything. Of course she did. She insisted on using a private genetic testing laboratory in Manhattan, one the Whitmore family had used for confidential medical matters in the past. That alone should have made me refuse. But I was exhausted. I was healing. I was nursing a newborn, sleeping in pieces, bleeding, aching, and trying to hold together a marriage that was already cracking under my hands. Ethan promised he would go with me. Then on the morning of the appointment, he got an urgent call from the office. I stood in the foyer holding Noah in his car seat while Ethan spoke into his phone, his face tense. I have to handle this, he said after hanging up. It's the hotel acquisition. There's a problem with the financing. I stared at him. You're not coming? I'll meet you there if I can. I did not even have the strength to be surprised. Margaret descended the stairs behind him. I'll go with Claire, she said. No, I replied immediately. Ethan looked uncomfortable. Claire, the appointment is already set. I can take a cab. Nonsense, Margaret said. You just had a baby. I looked at Ethan, silently begging him to see it. To see her, to see me, but he only kissed my forehead and said, It'll be okay, I promise. Another promise. I should have known by then what Whitmore promises were worth. The lab was located on the 22nd floor of a private medical building in Manhattan. Glass walls, quiet hallways, soft gray carpets, receptionists who spoke in careful voices. Margaret signed us in before I could reach the desk. I can do that, I said. I know, she replied, but you're tired. I hated how easily she turned control into concern. A technician called us back. She explained the process. A cheek swab for Noah, a cheek swab for Ethan, later since he was not present. A chain of custody form, identification, signatures. I listened carefully, too carefully. Maybe some part of me already sensed danger. When the technician handed me the paperwork, Margaret reached for it. I'll help. I pulled it back. No, I'll sign for my son. Her eyes met mine. For a second, the mask slipped. Then she smiled. Of course. The technician swabbed Noah's cheek while he fussed and waved his tiny fists. It's okay, I whispered. Almost done. I watched the swab go into the tube. I watched the tube get labeled. I watched the label with Noah's name, date of birth, and sample number. I watched everything. But I did not watch Margaret when the technician stepped out to make copies of my ID. That was my mistake. I looked down at Noah for only a moment. He had started crying, his face red and furious. I lifted him from the carrier and rocked him gently. Shh, baby, I've got you. Behind me, I heard Margaret's phone vibrate, then her voice, low and controlled. Yes, we're here. A pause. No, the father's sample will be submitted separately. Another pause. I expect discretion. I turned. Margaret ended the call. Who was that? I asked. Family office. At a DNA lab? She slipped the phone into her handbag. The Whitmore family office handles confidential matters. I looked at her handbag. For reasons I could not explain, my stomach tightened. 2 days later, Ethan gave his sample. I did not go with him. He told me Margaret had arranged for a courier to deliver it directly from the house. A courier? I asked. It's standard for private clients. Is it? He frowned. Claire, please, don't start seeing conspiracies everywhere. I laughed softly. Not because it was funny. Because the woman who had me followed was now managing the test that would decide whether my husband trusted me, and Ethan thought I was the unreasonable one. The waiting was worse than the test. Every hour stretched. Every conversation felt staged. Margaret became strangely calm. Too calm. She no longer made sharp comments at dinner. She no longer watched Noah with open suspicion. Instead, she watched Ethan. She studied him the way a chess player studies a king already trapped. Ethan barely slept. Sometimes I woke up and found him standing beside Noah's bassinet, staring down at him. Once I whispered, What are you thinking? He did not turn around. I'm thinking he has my mouth. My heart twisted, because he's your son. Ethan nodded quickly. I know. But he said it like a man trying to convince himself. On the 5th day, the results arrived. Not by email. Not by phone. A sealed envelope delivered by hand to the Whitmore mansion. Margaret received it first. I was in the nursery feeding Noah when the housekeeper knocked softly. Mrs. Whitmore would like you downstairs. Mrs. Whitmore. In that house, there was only one woman who owned that name. I knew before I entered the room. I knew from the silence. Ethan stood near the fireplace, pale and motionless. Olivia sat on the sofa with one hand over her mouth. Margaret stood beside the coffee table, holding a sheet of paper. The envelope lay open. My legs felt weak. What is this? I asked, though I already knew. Margaret looked at me. Her face was solemn, almost sad. That was when I became truly afraid, because Margaret looked like she had rehearsed grief. Claire, she said softly, I think you should sit down. I held Noah closer. No. Ethan would not look at me. My voice came out thin. Ethan? He lifted his eyes slowly. The pain in them was real. But pain without trust is just another weapon. Margaret placed the paper on the table and turned it toward me. The words at the bottom blurred at first. Then they became sharp, clear, impossible. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. Conclusion, Ethan Whitmore is excluded as the biological father. The room tilted. No, I whispered. Noah stirred against my chest. I stared at the paper, waiting for the letters to rearrange themselves into something true. They did not. Margaret's voice came from somewhere far away. I am sorry it had to happen this way. I looked at Ethan. Tell me you don't believe this. He closed his eyes. That was the first answer. Ethan, I said louder now. Look at me. He opened his eyes and I saw the battle inside him. Love, shame, fear, weakness, all of it. But not enough trust. Claire, he whispered, how could this happen? The question hit me harder than an accusation, because it meant Margaret had won. Not completely. Not yet, but enough. I shook my head. It didn't happen. This is wrong. Margaret inhaled slowly. The test is clear. The test is wrong. DNA does not lie. I turned on her. No, but people do. Her eyes hardened. Ethan flinched. Olivia gasped. Are you seriously blaming Mom? I'm blaming whoever touched that test. Margaret stepped closer. You should be very careful what you say next. I looked at Ethan, desperate. She did this, I said. Ethan, please, you know she did this. Margaret laughed once, quietly, elegantly, cruelly. Of course, she said. When evidence appears, blame the mother-in-law. I felt tears burn my eyes. Ethan, he looked at Noah, then at the paper, then at me. And in that moment, I knew I had already lost him. Not because he hated me, not because he wanted to believe the worst, but because Margaret had built the doubt carefully enough that the fake result had somewhere to land. He whispered, I need time. Time. I had just given birth. I was standing in front of him with his son in my arms, and he needed time. Something inside me went very still. Margaret folded the test result and placed it back into the envelope. No, she said. What this family needs now is clarity. I looked at her. There it was. The real Margaret. Not the hostess. Not the concerned grandmother. Not the elegant widow protecting her son, the executioner. And the sentence had already been written. Noah began to cry. I kissed his forehead, breathing in the soft newborn scent of him, trying not to collapse. I looked at Ethan one last time. If you believe that paper over me, I said, my voice shaking, then you were never my husband the way I thought you were. He said nothing, and Margaret smiled. Not much. Just enough for me to see it. Just enough for me to know the test had done exactly what she wanted. It had not proved the truth. It had replaced it. For a few seconds after I saw the DNA test, I could not hear anything. The room was full of people. Margaret, Ethan, Olivia, the housekeeper standing frozen near the doorway, Noah crying against my chest, but everything sounded far away, like I had been pushed underwater. I stared at the paper on the table. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. Ethan Whitmore is excluded as the biological father. The words were clean, clinical, final. That was the cruelest part. They did not shake, they did not hesitate, they did not care that my whole life was breaking apart because of them. I looked down at Noah. His little face was red from crying. His tiny mouth opened and closed as he searched for comfort, for safety, for me. He was only days old. He did not know that the adults in the room had already put him on trial. I kissed his forehead. You're okay, I whispered, though nothing was okay. Mommy's here. Margaret's voice cut through the room. Claire, this can be handled quietly if you cooperate. I looked at her. Cooperate. The word made my stomach turn. I was standing there in a robe and slippers, still weak from childbirth, holding a newborn baby, and she spoke to me like I was an employee caught stealing silverware. Cooperate with what? I asked. Margaret folded her hands in front of her. With the truth. I laughed once. It came out broken. The truth? I repeated. You wouldn't know the truth if it walked into this room and called you by name. Olivia stood up sharply. Don't talk to my mother like that. I turned to her. You stood there while she accused me of cheating on your brother 2 days after I gave birth. Don't you dare lecture me about manners. Olivia's face flushed. Ethan finally spoke. Claire, stop. I looked at him slowly. There it was. Not Mom, stop. Not Olivia, stop. Not everyone, calm down. Claire, stop. My name in his mouth sounded like surrender. I stepped toward him. No, I said. You don't get to ask me to stop. Not now. His eyes were red. He looked devastated, but devastation was not defense. I don't know what to think, he said. You know me. I thought I did. That sentence landed like a slap. My breath caught. Ethan seemed to realize what he had said, because his face changed immediately. Claire, I didn't mean. Yes, I whispered. You did. Noah cried harder. The sound pulled me back from the edge of collapsing. I adjusted him in my arms and forced myself to stand straighter. Margaret watched me with satisfaction disguised as concern. Ethan is in shock, she said, as any man would be. I looked at her. You planned this. Her expression cooled. Be careful. You had me followed. You took pictures of me with a coworker. You planted doubt in his head for months, and now this test magically says exactly what you wanted it to say. Margaret's eyes narrowed. You are emotional. I just had a baby. No, she said. You are desperate. The room went silent. Margaret took one slow step toward me. You brought a child into this family under false pretenses, and now that the truth has come out, you are attacking everyone else to avoid accountability. I stared at her, almost amazed. She was good. God, she was good. If someone had walked into that room at that moment, they might have believed her. She sounded calm, reasonable, heard on behalf of her son. That was Margaret's talent. She could murder your reputation while sounding like she regretted the mess. I turned back to Ethan. Look at him, I said. Ethan's gaze dropped to Noah. Look at your son. His jaw trembled. Margaret spoke quickly. Do not manipulate him with the baby. The baby? I repeated. His name is Noah. Ethan closed his eyes. I stepped closer, close enough for him to see every feature of the child he was refusing. Look at his eyes, I said. Look at his mouth. Look at the way his forehead creases when he cries. You know where he gets that from. Ethan opened his eyes. For 1 second I saw it. Recognition. Love. Terror. His hand lifted, almost reaching for Noah. Then Margaret said Ethan, just his name. One word, and his hand stopped. That tiny movement destroyed me more than the test did, because in that moment I understood. Margaret did not need chains to control her son. She only needed his fear of disappointing her. Ethan lowered his hand. I stepped back. Something in me went quiet. Not calm. Not healed. Quiet in the way a house becomes quiet after the fire has already taken everything. Margaret turned to a side table and picked up a folder I had not noticed before. Of course there was a folder. Margaret Whitmore did not improvise destruction. She prepared it. I have spoken with the family attorney, she said. My blood turned cold. Ethan looked up. Mom, what? She ignored him and opened the folder. There are temporary separation documents. Given the circumstances, it is best for everyone if Claire leaves the property tonight. Tonight? I said. My voice barely came out. Margaret met my eyes. Yes. Ethan stepped forward. Mom, wait. No, Margaret said sharply. For the first time that night, her mask cracked enough for the room to see the steel underneath. This cannot continue. Every hour she remains here exposes you, this family, and this child to more damage. This child? I said. You mean my son? Margaret looked at Noah with cold distance. I mean the child whose paternity has just been legally disproven. I felt my knees weaken, legally disproven, as if motherhood could be erased by ink. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. We need time to figure this out. Margaret turned on him. There is nothing to figure out. The result is conclusive. It could be wrong, he said, but his voice was weak. My heart jumped anyway. I looked at him. Say it again, I thought. Say it louder. Say it like a husband. But Margaret moved closer to him, lowering her voice. Ethan, I know this is painful, but if you hesitate now, she will use your guilt against you. Think clearly. He looked at me, then at Noah, then at the floor, and that was it. That was the moment I stopped begging him silently. Margaret held out a pen. Claire, sign the acknowledgement that you are leaving voluntarily. I stared at the pen, then at her. You think I'm going to sign something while holding a newborn and being ambushed by your lawyer? It will make things easier. For whom? For the child. My laugh was bitter. You do not get to pretend you care about him. Margaret's face hardened. If you refuse, we can involve the courts. Ethan has resources. You do not. Ethan flinched. Mom. But he did not tell her to stop. Margaret continued, her voice smooth again. You have no independent wealth, no home prepared for an infant, no legal team, and after this result, your credibility is damaged. Damaged, that was what she called it. Not stolen, not sabotaged. Damaged. My reputation had been damaged the way a vase is damaged after someone throws it against a wall. I looked at Ethan. Are you hearing this? He whispered. Claire, maybe you should go somewhere for a few days. Just until I cut him off. Until what? Until you decide whether I'm a liar. Until your mother tells you what to feel. His face twisted. I'm trying to keep this from getting worse. It is worse, I said. This is worse. Noah suddenly quieted, exhausted from crying. The silence that followed felt unbearable. I looked at my son's sleeping face and realized I had a choice. I could stay and scream until my throat tore open. I could beg Ethan to believe me. I could fight Margaret in a house where every wall belonged to her, every staff member feared her, every document could be twisted by her money. Or I could leave with the one person in that room who truly needed me. I lifted my chin. I'm not signing anything. Margaret's eyes flashed. Then you leave with nothing. I came into this house with nothing you valued, I said. Remember? Olivia scoffed. Ethan whispered my name. I turned to him. For a moment, I let myself look at him fully. The man I had loved, the man who had held my hand while I gave birth, the man who had cried when Noah opened his eyes, the man who was now standing between his mother and his family, choosing the easier betrayal. I need you to remember this moment, I said. His face crumpled. Claire? No, remember it exactly. Remember me standing here with your son in my arms. Remember that I asked you to believe me. Remember that I begged you without begging. Tears ran down his face. I don't know what's true. I nodded slowly. Then you never knew me. I turned and walked out of the room. No one followed at first. Not Ethan, not Olivia, not even Margaret. I climbed the stairs slowly because my body still hurt. Every step pulled at stitches and bruises I had not told anyone about. I held Noah close with one arm and gripped the railing with the other. In the bedroom, I stood in front of the closet and realized I did not know what to pack when your life ended suddenly. A sweater, a few nursing bras, diapers, Noah's blanket from the hospital, my phone charger. The cream-colored dress I had worn the night I met Margaret for the first time was still hanging in the back of the closet. I looked at it and almost laughed. That girl had thought cruelty announced itself. She had not known it could wear silk and speak softly. I packed one suitcase, just one. Most of my things had never truly felt like mine in that house anyway. As I zipped the suitcase, Ethan appeared in the doorway. His eyes were wet. He looked smaller somehow. Claire, he said, please don't make this harder. I turned around slowly. Harder for you? He stepped into the room. I don't want you out in the middle of the night with the baby. Then tell me to stay. His mouth opened. No words came. I waited. Even then, even after everything, some broken part of me waited. He looked toward the hallway, toward the stairs, toward his mother's world. Then he looked back at me. "I can put you in a hotel," he said. "A hotel. Not our room. Not our home. Not beside him. A hotel." I nodded once. That was the final answer. "No," I said. "I don't want anything paid for by this family. Claire, you don't have money. I have enough dignity left not to let you turn my exile into charity." He flinched. "I never wanted this. But you allowed it." He covered his face with one hand. "I'm sorry." I picked up the suitcase. "Your apology is early," I said. "Your courage is late." He reached for Noah, not fully, just a small movement. "Can I hold him?" I looked at him. The room seemed to hold its breath. Then I said, "No." Pain crossed his face. I hated that it hurt him. I hated that I still cared. "You don't get to question whether he is yours and hold him in the same breath," I said. Ethan whispered, "Claire, please. He is not evidence. He is not a scandal. He is not a mistake." My voice broke. "He is my son." "Our son," Ethan said, so quietly I almost missed it. I stared at him. "Say that downstairs." He said nothing. I moved past him. At the top of the stairs, I saw Margaret waiting below in the foyer. Of course she was waiting. She stood beside the front door like a judge watching a sentence being carried out. Olivia stood behind her, arms crossed, expression uncertain for the first time. The housekeeper was crying silently near the hallway. Outside, rain battered the windows. Another storm. Or maybe the same one from the night Noah was born had simply returned to finish the job. I descended the stairs carefully, suitcase bumping softly behind me. Margaret looked at the bag. "That is all?" I stopped on the last step. "No," I said. "I'm taking the truth with me too." Her mouth tightened. "Truth does not change test results." "No," I said, "but time does change who believes them." For a moment, something dark passed through her eyes. Fear. Small, almost invisible, but real. Then she opened the front door. Cold rain rushed into the foyer, the kind of rain that soaks through clothes in seconds. Ethan came down behind me. "Claire, at least let the driver." "No." I walked past Margaret. As I crossed the threshold, she leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "You should have stayed in your own world." I stopped. Noah slept against my chest, wrapped in a blue blanket. I turned my head just enough to look at her. "One day," I whispered back, "your world is going to choke on what you did." Then I stepped into the rain. The door remained open behind me for a few seconds. I could feel Ethan standing there. I could feel him watching. I waited for footsteps, for his voice, for anything. "Claire, come back. I believe you. I choose you." The rain fell harder. No footsteps came. The door closed. The sound was soft, final. I stood in the driveway of the Whitmore mansion with a suitcase in one hand and my newborn son in the other, rain running down my face so quickly I could pretend I was not crying. The mansion glowed behind me, warm and golden, full of people who had decided I was disposable. I looked down at Noah. His eyes were closed. His tiny hand had escaped the blanket and curled against my collarbone. I pressed my lips to his fingers. "It's just us now," I whispered. Then I started walking. Down the long driveway, past the fountain, past the iron gates, out of the world that had never wanted me. Every step hurt, my body hurt, my heart hurt, my pride hurt. But with each step, something else began to grow beneath the pain. Not revenge. Not yet. Survival. At the road, I turned back once. Through the rain, I could see a figure standing at one of the upstairs windows. Ethan. Even from that distance, I knew it was him. He did not come down. He did not open the gate. He only watched. That was the image I carried with me for 5 years. Not Margaret's smile. Not the fake test. Not Olivia's judgment. Ethan at the window, watching me leave with his son. And doing nothing. That night, I learned the difference between being abandoned and being freed. Abandonment is what they did to me. Freedom is what I became when I survived it. I did not have a plan when I left the Whitmore mansion. I had a newborn baby, one suitcase, a soaked coat, and a phone battery at 12%. That was all. No money in my own name except a small checking account Ethan had never cared enough to ask about. No apartment. No car, because mine had been parked inside the Whitmore garage and I refused to go back for it. No lawyer, no family nearby, just Noah. Just the sound of his tiny breathing against my chest while rain ran down my face. I walked until the iron gates disappeared behind me. Then I stood under a tree at the edge of the road, shivering so hard I could barely hold my phone. For a few seconds, I stared at Ethan's contact. His name was still saved with a heart beside it. Ethan. I hated myself for looking at it. I hated that some broken, desperate part of me still hoped he would call. That he would say, "Claire, I'm coming." That he would say, "I was wrong." That he would say, "Bring my son home." But the screen stayed dark. No missed calls, no messages, nothing. So I called the only person I knew would answer. My mother. She picked up on the second ring. "Claire? Honey, why are you calling so late?" The moment I heard her voice, I broke. I tried to say her name. I tried to explain. I tried to be strong, but all that came out was a sound I had never heard from myself before. Not crying. Something deeper, something torn open. "Mom," I whispered, "I need help." There was no hesitation, no judgment, no questions about shame or reputation or appearances. Only my mother's voice, suddenly wide awake. "Where are you?" I looked around at the dark road, the rain, the stone wall of the estate behind me. "I don't know exactly." "Send me your location right now." "I can't come home," I said, shaking. "It's too far." "Noah." "Listen to me," she said firmly. "You are not alone. Do you hear me? You are not alone." Those words saved me more than she ever knew. My parents were still in Ohio, but my mother had an old friend in Connecticut named Rachel Moore. Rachel was a retired school counselor who lived 40 minutes away in Norwalk. My mother called her, and Rachel arrived before midnight in an old Subaru with a baby blanket, a thermos of hot tea, and tears in her eyes. She got out of the car and looked at me for 1 second. Then she took off her coat and wrapped it around Noah and me. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "Get in the car." I sat in the back seat with Noah against my chest while Rachel drove through the rain. She did not ask for the whole story. Not then. She only turned up the heat and said, "There's a guest room ready. We'll figure out tomorrow after you sleep." But I did not sleep. That first night I lay in Rachel's guest room with Noah beside me in a borrowed bassinet, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a small house that did not smell like lilies or money. The room had yellow curtains, a bookshelf full of old counseling books, a knitted blanket at the foot of the bed. It was not elegant, it was not impressive, it was safe, and somehow that made me cry harder. Noah woke every 2 hours. I fed him, changed him, held him, whispered to him until my voice was raw. Between each feeding I stared at my phone, still nothing from Ethan. By morning I understood he was not coming. That realization did not hit like lightning. It settled like snow, quiet, heavy, cold. Rachel made oatmeal and sat across from me at her kitchen table while I told her everything. The fake suspicion, the photos, the DNA test, Margaret's attorney, Ethan's silence. When I finished, Rachel did not say what most people say when they do not know how to respond. She did not say, "Maybe there's another side." She did not say, "Are you sure?" She did not say, "Rich families can be complicated." She simply reached across the table and took my hand. "Claire," she said, "do not let powerful people convince you that exhaustion is guilt." I stared at her. That sentence became the first brick in the foundation of the woman I would become. Over the next few weeks, my life became small, painfully small. Feed Noah, pump milk, wash bottles, sleep for 40 minutes, call lawyers, cry in the shower, repeat. My parents drove from Ohio as soon as they could. My mother held Noah and wept quietly into his blanket. My father stood in Rachel's kitchen with his baseball cap in his hands, his face red with rage. "I'll go there," he said. "I swear to God, Claire, I'll go to that house." "No," I said. "They threw my daughter out in the rain." "I know. With a baby." "I know." His voice broke. "I should have protected you." I looked at my father, this good ordinary man who had spent his whole life working hard and never once made me feel small. "You did," I said. "You raised me to survive this." He covered his face and cried. That hurt more than anything Margaret had said, because cruelty from your enemies cuts one way, pain in the eyes of people who love you cuts another. We tried to fight. At first, I believed the truth would be enough. I called the lab. They would not release additional records without legal requests. I asked about chain of custody. They said everything had been properly documented. I demanded a second test. Their representative politely told me that any further testing would require consent from all relevant parties. Ethan did not respond to my request, not directly. Instead, a letter arrived from Whitmore Family Council. Formal, cold, brutal. It stated that Ethan Whitmore would not acknowledge paternity based on the completed DNA results. It warned me against making defamatory claims about the Whitmore family. It advised that any attempt to contact Ethan through harassing communication could result in legal action. Harassing communication. That was what they called a mother begging the father of her child to listen. My mother read the letter and went pale. My father slammed his fist on the table so hard Noah startled awake and began to cry. "I'm sorry," he whispered immediately, rushing toward the bassinet. "I'm sorry, little man." I picked Noah up and held him close. That was when I realized the Whitmores were not only trying to remove me, they were trying to scare everyone who loved me. I met with 3 attorneys. The first asked for a retainer I could not afford. The second told me that challenging a private DNA report against a family like the Whitmores would be difficult, expensive, and emotionally damaging. The third listened carefully, then said the sentence I still remember. "You may be right, Miss Bennett, but being right and being able to prove it are not always the same thing." I left his office carrying Noah in a baby wrap against my chest. Outside, New York traffic screamed past me. People walked quickly around us, holding coffees, phones, briefcases, umbrellas. The world kept moving. That felt offensive somehow. My life had ended and everyone else still had places to be. For a while, I considered giving up. Not on Noah, never on Noah, but on proving anything. I was tired of explaining myself to strangers who looked at me like a sad story with bad paperwork. I was tired of watching people's expressions change when they heard the phrase DNA test. I was tired of carrying shame that did not belong to me. Then one night, when Noah was almost 3 months old, he smiled at me for the first time, a real smile. Small and crooked. Ethan's smile. I froze. Then I laughed and cried at the same time. Noah waved his tiny hands like he was proud of himself. In that moment, I made a decision. If I could not clear my name yet, I would build a life so strong that Margaret Whitmore's lie could not destroy it. I moved to New York when Noah was 6 months old. Not Manhattan. I could not afford Manhattan. I rented a tiny 1-bedroom apartment in Queens above a bakery that started making bread at 4 in the morning. The floors creaked. The heat clanked loudly in winter. The kitchen was so small I could touch the stove and sink at the same time. But the lease had my name on it. Mine. No Whitmore money. No Whitmore rules. No Margaret watching from doorways. I put Noah's crib in the bedroom and slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. I taped blackout paper over the windows because the streetlights shone in all night. I bought second-hand baby clothes and clipped coupons with the concentration of someone studying for a final exam. During the day, I worked as a substitute teacher. At night, I took online courses in child development and educational counseling. Sometimes I graded papers with Noah asleep on my lap. Sometimes I fell asleep sitting upright and woke with textbook pages stuck to my cheek. There were months when I had exactly $23 left after rent, groceries, diapers, and utilities. There were nights I stood in the grocery store comparing the price of apples and bananas, doing math in my head while Noah babbled in the cart. There were winter mornings when I walked him to daycare with 2 pairs of socks on because I could not afford new boots for myself. But Noah never went without. Not food, not warmth, not love. Never love. I made sure of that. As he grew, Noah became the child people noticed, not because he was loud, because he was bright, observant, gentle. At 2, he lined up his toy cars by color and clapped when he got the pattern right. At 3, he asked why the moon followed us home. At 4, he corrected me when I skipped pages in bedtime stories. "Mom," he said, frowning, "you missed the dragon part." I was hoping you wouldn't notice. I notice everything. Yes, I thought. You do. He had Ethan's eyes, but he had my stubbornness. Every year on Noah's birthday, I thought about the Whitmore mansion. Not because I missed it. I did not. I thought about Ethan. I wondered if he remembered the date. The first year, I hoped he did. The second year, I hated that I cared. The third year, I stopped expecting anything. By the fourth, I no longer checked my phone. But Ethan did remember. I learned that later. At the time, all I knew was that sometimes an envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a cashier's check made out to me. No note, no apology, no explanation. The first time it happened, Noah was 8 months old. $5,000. I stared at the check until my hands shook. Rachel, who was visiting that weekend, looked at it and said, "It's from him, isn't it?" I don't know, but I did know. I could feel Ethan's guilt in the blankness of it. I tore the check in half. Rachel watched quietly. "You could use that money," she said gently. "I know. Then why tear it up? Because I'm not letting him pay for silence." After that, the checks came every few months. I tore up every one. Pride is expensive, but sometimes pride is the only shelter you can afford. Noah began asking about his father when he was 3. It happened at preschool. Father's Day. The teacher had the children draw cards, and Noah came home holding a construction paper tie covered in blue crayon. He climbed onto the couch beside me and said, "Mom, where should I send this?" I looked at the card. The words "Happy Father's Day" were written in uneven marker. My throat closed. Noah watched my face carefully. Do I have a dad? I had prepared for that question. I had practiced answers in my head. Gentle answers. Age-appropriate answers. Answers that did not poison him with my pain. But when the moment came, none of them felt enough. So I took his small hand and said the only true thing I could give him. "Yes, sweetheart, you do." "Where is he?" I swallowed. "He made a very big mistake." Noah frowned. "Did he say sorry?" "No. Why not?" "Because he is weak," I thought. "Because his mother taught him to fear truth. Because he looked at you and still chose doubt." But I did not say any of that. I brushed Noah's hair back from his forehead. Sometimes adults are afraid to fix the mistakes they make. He thought about this with the seriousness only children have. "Is he bad?" My heart broke all over again. "No," I said carefully, "but he did something that hurt us." Noah looked down at the card. "Can I keep this?" "Of course." He put it in his treasure box beside a toy dinosaur, a smooth rock from the park, and a broken yellow crayon. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat on the kitchen floor and cried so hard I had to cover my mouth with both hands. Not because I wanted Ethan back. I did not. I cried because my son was already learning that love could be absent without explanation. And I hated Ethan for making me explain pain he should have prevented. Meanwhile, Ethan Whitmore became a ghost I tried not to follow. But sometimes his name appeared where I did not expect it. Business articles, charity photos, real estate announcements. The Whitmore Group expands into luxury residential towers. Ethan Whitmore named executive vice president. Whitmore family attends annual children's hospital gala. In the photos, he looked polished, successful, older, sad maybe, but sadness photographed well on rich men. It looked like depth. No one saw the woman he left in the rain. No one saw the child erased by a report. Margaret appeared beside him often, elegant as ever, smiling for cameras, donating money to hospitals, speaking about family values. That was the part that nearly made me bitter. Nearly. But bitterness required energy I could not spare. I was too busy building. By the time Noah turned 5, my life looked nothing like the night I left Greenwich. I had finished my certification in educational counseling. I had started working at a small private learning center in Brooklyn. Within a year, I was helping run programs for children with learning differences, trauma backgrounds, and unstable homes. I understood those children. Not because I had lived their exact lives, but because I knew what it felt like when adults made decisions that broke the world around you. I became good at my work. Really good. Parents began requesting me. Teachers called me for advice. The center director asked if I would help create a new family support program. For the first time in years, I felt something like pride without pain attached to it. Then one afternoon, a man in a dark suit came to the center asking for me. I was in my office reviewing a student file when the receptionist called. "Claire, there's someone here named Nathan Harris. He says it's important." The name meant nothing to me. When he entered, he looked about 30, tall, composed, and serious in the way lawyers often are. His suit was expensive but not flashy. He held a folder under one arm. "Miss Bennett?" he asked. "Yes." "My name is Nathan Harris." I heard. He hesitated. "I'm engaged to Olivia Whitmore." Every muscle in my body locked. For a second, I was back in that mansion. Back in the rain. Back in the room where they all looked at me like I was dirt on marble. I stood. You need to leave. I understand why you'd say that. No, you don't. His expression remained calm but not cold. You're right. I don't. Not fully. Then leave. He placed the folder gently on the edge of my desk. I think the DNA test used against you 5 years ago was falsified. The room went silent. Not actually. Outside my office, phones rang. Children laughed in the hallway. Someone pushed a rolling cart past the door. But inside me, everything stopped. I looked at the folder, then at Nathan. What did you say? He took a breath. My father is Dr. Samuel Harris. He supervised the original genetic testing process. Recently, while reviewing old records connected to my upcoming marriage into the Whitmore family, he found irregularities. My hands went cold. What kind of irregularities? Chain of custody discrepancies, a forged confirmation signature, missing digital logs that were later recovered, and a result summary that does not match the original data. I gripped the edge of my desk. For 5 years, I had imagined this moment. Someone saying the test was wrong. Someone saying I was not crazy. Someone saying the truth still existed somewhere outside my memory. But when it finally came, I did not feel relief. I felt rage. So much rage I could barely speak. Why now? I asked. Nathan's jaw tightened. Because I didn't know until now. And your father? He suspected something years ago but couldn't prove it. The lab was acquired, records were archived, and someone made sure the final report looked clean. Someone, I repeated. Nathan did not look away. We believe it was Margaret Whitmore. Hearing her name spoken plainly in that office felt like opening a locked room inside my chest. I sat down slowly. Nathan continued. My father kept copies of raw data backups. He didn't understand their significance until I mentioned Olivia's brother Ethan and the family history around his divorce. Divorce, I said softly. Such a clean word for what happened. Nathan looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Don't be, I said. You didn't throw me out. He nodded once. No, but I'm about to marry into the family that did. I looked at him carefully then. Why are you really here? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because if Olivia and I build a life together, I need to know what kind of foundation I'm standing on. And because a child was harmed by this. A child, not scandal, not allegation, not complication. A child. For that alone, I listened. Nathan opened the folder and showed me copies, numbers, sample IDs, dates, signatures. A report I had never seen. My eyes blurred before I reached the final line. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Conclusion, Ethan Whitmore cannot be excluded as the biological father. I pressed one hand over my mouth. Noah. My son, who had been forced to grow up without his father because Margaret Whitmore needed a lie to win. I stood so quickly my chair scraped the floor. Nathan reached out slightly, then stopped himself. I know this is overwhelming. No, I said, my voice shaking. Overwhelming is being thrown out in the rain with a newborn. This is 5 years too late. He accepted that. I have an invitation for you. I laughed bitterly. To what? The Whitmore apology tour? To Olivia's wedding. I stared at him. He continued, my father will be there. Ethan will be there. Margaret will be there. Most of the people who believe the lie will be there. No, the answer came instantly. Noah is not a weapon. I agree. I will not walk him into that family circus just so you can test your future in-laws. That's not what I'm asking. Then what are you asking? Nathan looked directly at me. I'm asking whether you want the truth spoken in a room where Margaret cannot bury it quietly. I said nothing, because that was the first time anyone had offered me something Margaret had stolen. Not money, not pity. A room where the truth could stand up straight. That night after Noah went to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table with the folder open in front of me. The apartment was quiet. Outside, the bakery downstairs had already begun preparing dough for morning. I read the true report again, and again, and again. Then I looked toward Noah's bedroom. He was asleep with one arm thrown over his stuffed dinosaur, his face peaceful, his hair falling across his forehead exactly like Ethan's used to. For 5 years, I had told myself I did not need the Whitmores to know the truth. But Noah did. Not because he needed their name, not because he needed their money. Because one day he would ask where he came from, and I wanted him to have an answer that had not been poisoned by Margaret's lie. The next morning, I called Nathan. When he answered, I said, I'll come. He was silent for a second. Are you sure? I looked at Noah, who was sitting at the table eating cereal and making a dinosaur walk across his placemat. No, I said, but I'm done hiding from people who should be ashamed to face me. Nathan exhaled. My father will bring the documents. Good, there may be consequences. I looked down at the true DNA report. There already were. After I hung up, Noah looked up from his cereal. Mom, who was that? I folded the papers carefully. Someone who found something important. What? I walked over and brushed a crumb from his cheek. The truth. He smiled. Did you lose it? I smiled back, though my eyes burned. No, baby, I whispered. Someone took it, but we're going to get it back. And for the first time in 5 years, I did not feel like the woman who had been thrown out of the Whitmore mansion. I felt like the woman who was about to walk back in. Not to beg, not to cry, not to be accepted, to be believed. And if Margaret Whitmore wanted to call that revenge, she was welcome to. Because the truth was finally coming home. For 5 years, I had imagined seeing Ethan again. Sometimes in my weakest moments, I imagined him appearing at my door in the middle of the night, soaked from rain the way I had been, begging forgiveness. Sometimes I imagined slapping him. Sometimes I imagined saying nothing at all. But I never imagined I would see him again at his sister's wedding, standing beneath chandeliers, surrounded by white roses and champagne, while the truth sat in my purse like a loaded gun. The week before Olivia Whitmore's wedding, I barely slept. Not because I was afraid of Margaret. I had already survived the worst thing she could do to me. I was afraid of what the truth might do to Noah. He was 5 years old, still small enough to believe dinosaurs might come back if scientists tried hard enough, still innocent enough to ask why clouds looked sad before it rained, still young enough to think adults always told the truth when something mattered. I wanted to protect that. I wanted to protect him from the Whitmores, from their money, from their cold rooms, from the way they could make a person feel guilty for being wounded. But the truth was no longer just mine. It belonged to Noah, too. The night after Nathan came to my office, I sat on the edge of Noah's bed while he slept. His stuffed dinosaur was tucked under one arm. His mouth was slightly open. His lashes rested against his cheeks. A nightlight shaped like the moon glowed softly beside him. He looked peaceful, untouched. That was what I wanted him to stay. But peace built on a lie is fragile. Eventually, children grow tall enough to reach the shelf where the truth is hidden. I brushed his hair away from his forehead. "You deserve to know where you came from," I whispered. "And you deserve to know no one had the right to be ashamed of you." The next morning, I called Rachel. She answered with her usual warmth. "Claire, honey, is everything okay?" I looked at the folder Nathan had left on my kitchen table. "No," I said, "but it might be." I told her everything. The recovered DNA data, Dr. Samuel Harris, Nathan, the wedding invitation, the possibility of facing Margaret in a room full of people who had believed her lie. Rachel listened without interrupting. When I finished, the line was quiet. Then she said, "Are you asking if you should go?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do." I closed my eyes. "I don't want to use Noah as proof." "You wouldn't be," Rachel said gently. "You'd be standing beside him as his mother. They'll look at him. They'll whisper. They already erased him once, Claire. Don't let fear help them do it again." Her words settled into me slowly. That was Rachel's gift. She never pushed me toward revenge. She pushed me toward myself. Later that day, I called my parents. My mother cried when I told her the true result had been found. Not loud, dramatic crying, quiet crying. The kind that comes after years of holding anger so tightly it becomes part of your bones. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew it." My father did not speak for almost a full minute. Then he said, "Send me the address." "No, Dad. I'm serious, Claire." "I know you are. That's why I'm saying no. I want to stand next to you." My throat tightened. "I know, but this is something I have to do myself." "You don't have to do anything alone." I looked over at Noah, who was coloring at the kitchen table with his tongue sticking out in concentration. "I won't be alone," I said. "I'll have Noah." My father's voice softened. "That little boy has more courage in his pinky finger than that whole family has in their bloodline." I laughed through the tears. "He gets it from my side." "Damn right he does." After I hung up, I sat beside Noah and watched him color a picture of a house with a yellow sun above it. "Mom," he said without looking up, "can people have two homes?" The question hit me in the chest. "Sometimes," I said carefully. "Like if they visit someone?" "Yes, or if their family is in more than one place." He thought about that. "Do I have family in another place?" My hand tightened around my coffee mug. This was the thing about children. They opened doors you were still gathering the courage to touch. I set the mug down. "Yes," I said softly, "you do." He looked up. "Where?" "In Connecticut." His eyebrows pulled together in that little crease that always hurt to see. "Do they know me?" I swallowed. "Not really." "Why?" I took a breath. "Because your grandmother is cruel, because your father was weak, because a piece of paper stole 5 years from you." But those were my answers, not his. So I said, "Because grown-ups made a very big mistake." He studied me, serious and quiet. "Are we going to fix it?" I looked at my son, 5 years old, too young to carry my pain, but somehow strong enough to ask the right question. I reached across the table and took his little hand. "We're going to tell the truth," I said. "That's the first step." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "Okay, just okay. No fear, no anger, no shame." Margaret had tried to make him into a scandal before he could even hold his head up. But Noah was not a scandal. He was a child who still believed truth could fix things. I envied him for that. 2 days before the wedding, Nathan called again. "I need to prepare you," he said. "For what?" "There's a chance Margaret will try to have you removed before anything is said." I almost smiled. That sounds like Margaret. "She doesn't know you're coming. Not officially, but she may suspect something." "Why?" "My father asked the lab's archive department for certified copies of the original data. That request may have triggered notice somewhere." I looked out the window at the street below. A delivery truck was double parked in front of the bakery. Someone was arguing with a cab driver. Life was ordinary everywhere except inside my chest. "Does Ethan know?" I asked. Nathan paused. "No." I hated that the answer mattered to me. "Good," I said. "You're sure you don't want him told privately first?" "No, Claire. If Ethan had wanted the truth privately, he could have listened to me 5 years ago." Nathan was quiet. Then he said, "Fair enough. What about Olivia? She knows I invited someone connected to an old family matter. She doesn't know it's you." I laughed under my breath. "She's gonna love that." "She may be angry. Olivia has been angry since birth. She'll survive." For the first time, Nathan gave a quiet laugh. Then his tone became serious again. "My father will bring the certified documents. I'll have copies too. But Claire, once this comes out, it won't stay contained. There are guests, business associates, possibly press connected to the wedding." "Good. You understand what that means? Yes, I said. For once, Margaret won't get to choose who hears the truth. The day before the wedding, I took Noah shopping for a suit, not an expensive one. I could not afford the kind of clothes the Whitmores wore like armor, but I found a navy suit at a children's store in Queens with a white shirt and a tiny striped tie that made Noah stand taller the moment he tried it on. He looked at himself in the mirror. Do I look fancy? I smiled. You look very handsome. Like a spy? Maybe a little. He narrowed his eyes at his reflection. A truth spy. I laughed so suddenly the saleswoman glanced over. Yes, I said. Exactly like a truth spy. That night, after Noah went to bed, I laid my own dress across the couch. It was black, simple, knee-length, no designer label, no pearls chosen by Margaret, no attempt to look like I belonged in their world. I had spent too many years shrinking myself to fit rooms that were built to reject me. This time I would enter as myself. I placed the folder with the documents into my purse. Then I took out the old fake test. Yes, I had kept it. For 5 years, that paper had lived in a sealed envelope inside a box in my closet. Sometimes I hated myself for keeping it. Sometimes I thought about burning it, but I never did. Maybe because some part of me knew that one day the lie would need to face the truth. I laid the false report beside the true one on my kitchen table. 2 documents, 2 versions of my life. One had destroyed my marriage. The other had arrived too late to save it. I stared at Ethan's name printed on both pages. Ethan Whitmore. For years I had trained myself not to say his name out loud unless Noah asked. Now looking at those papers, I felt something unexpected. Not love, not longing, grief, not for the man he was, for the man I had believed him to be. The man who promised he would protect me. The man who cried when Noah was born. The man who almost reached for his son before Margaret said his name. Almost. That word had haunted me for 5 years. He almost defended me, almost believed me, almost became the father Noah deserved. But almost is where weak people go to hide from what they actually chose. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For a few minutes, I lay still on the pull-out couch, listening to the city outside my window. A garbage truck groaned down the street. Someone laughed below. The bakery ovens hummed to life beneath the floor. 5 years ago, I had left a mansion in the rain with nothing. Now I was leaving a tiny apartment with the truth. I showered, dressed, pulled my hair back, made coffee I barely drank. When Noah woke, he came out rubbing his eyes, his dinosaur tucked under one arm. Is today the truth day? He asked. My heart clenched. Yes, I said. Today is the truth day. He nodded and went to brush his teeth like this was a normal Saturday. Children are miraculous that way. They can carry enormous moments lightly, not because they do not matter, but because they have not yet learned to dress fear as logic. I helped him into his suit. He wiggled while I fixed his tie. Do I have to wear this all day? No. Can I take it off if I get hot? Yes. Can I bring Rex? I looked at the stuffed dinosaur on the bed. I almost said no. Then I thought of the Whitmore ballroom, the white roses, the polished floors, the cold people who'd once judged a newborn. Yes, I said. Bring Rex. Noah smiled. Rex tells the truth too. I'm sure he does. Before we left, I crouched in front of Noah near the door. There may be a lot of people today, I said. Some of them might stare. Some of them might say things we don't like. Bad things. Maybe confused things. He frowned. What do I do? I touched his cheek. You stay close to me, and you remember that you didn't do anything wrong. He looked almost offended. I know. I smiled. Of course he knew. The shame had never belonged to him. It had never belonged to me either. I just needed to remember that when I saw Margaret again, the car Nathan sent was waiting outside. I almost refused it when I saw it. A black town car, polished and quiet, the kind the Whitmores had used for everything. But then I reminded myself that accepting transportation was not the same as accepting control. The driver opened the door. Miss Bennett? Yes. He nodded politely. Mr. Harris asked me to take you to the Langford Hotel. Noah climbed in first, clutching Rex. I followed, smoothing my dress over my knees. As the car pulled away from the curb, I looked back at our building. The bakery. The crooked front steps. The apartment window with one curtain slightly uneven because Noah had pulled on it the week before. It was not grand, but it was ours. And no matter what happened that day, I knew where home was. The drive into Manhattan felt longer than it was. Noah pressed his face to the window, pointing out taxis, dogs, and a man carrying balloons shaped like stars. I answered him automatically, but my mind was somewhere else. Back in Greenwich. Back in the nursery. Back in the rain. I could still hear Margaret's voice. You should have stayed in your own world. I looked down at my purse. The documents were inside. For 5 years, Margaret's world had survived because the truth had been trapped in files, archives, and fear. Not anymore. When the car stopped outside the Langford Hotel, my breath caught. The entrance was lined with white flowers. Valets moved quickly. Guests in elegant clothes stepped out of luxury cars, laughing, adjusting cufflinks, holding tiny evening bags. Everything looked perfect. That was the Whitmore way. Make the surface so beautiful people felt rude noticing the rot underneath. Noah looked up at the hotel. Is this where the truth is? I took his hand. No, I said. The truth is with us. He considered that. Then he nodded. Okay. We stepped out of the car. For a moment, no one noticed us. We were just a woman in a black dress and a little boy in a navy suit entering a wedding we were not supposed to disturb. But then the doorman opened the glass doors. Warm air rushed out. Music drifted from somewhere inside. And I saw the first white rose arrangement in the lobby. My hands did not shake. That surprised me. I had thought I would tremble. I had thought fear would crawl up my spine the moment I stepped into their world again. But instead, I felt still, cold, clear. Not because I was fearless, because I had already lost what fear threatened to take. At the ballroom entrance, Nathan was waiting. He looked relieved when he saw us. "Claire," he said softly. "Nathan." His eyes moved to Noah and his expression changed with something like sorrow. "You must be Noah." Noah looked up at him. "I brought Rex." Nathan nodded solemnly. "Good. We may need backup." Noah smiled. For one second I liked Nathan, not because he was helping me, because he spoke to my son like he was a person, not evidence. Then Dr. Samuel Harris appeared beside him. He was older than I remembered from the lab paperwork photo Nathan had shown me. Silver hair, serious eyes, a face marked by regret. He looked at Noah first, then at me. "Miss Bennett," he said, "I owe you an apology I cannot possibly make large enough." I did not know what to do with that. An apology from the wrong man can feel like water offered after the house is already burned down. So I only said, "Do you have the documents?" He nodded. "Yes." "Certified copies?" "Yes." "Original data?" "Yes." "Proof your signature was forged?" His face tightened. "Yes," I nodded. "Then save the apology for after the truth is out." He accepted that. Nathan glanced toward the ballroom doors. "Everyone is inside. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. And Margaret? Front row," he said. "Exactly where she wants to be." Of course, I looked down at Noah. "You ready?" He squeezed my hand. "Truth Day." My throat tightened. "Yes," I whispered. "Truth Day." Nathan opened the ballroom doors. Light spilled over us. Music, voices, laughter, white flowers, crystal chandeliers, the polished world that had once swallowed me whole. I stepped inside with Noah beside me. At first, the room did not change. Then one woman near the entrance looked at me. Her smile faded. She whispered to her husband. He turned, then another guest, then another. Like a flame catching along a paper edge, recognition spread. Claire Bennett, the ex-wife, the scandal, the woman who disappeared, and the little boy. Always their eyes returned to the little boy. I kept walking. Across the room, Ethan turned. For 5 years, I had imagined that moment. But no imagination could have prepared me for the look on his face when he saw Noah. It was not confusion. It was not simple shock. It was grief recognizing itself too late. His glass lowered in his hand. His lips parted. And beside him, Margaret Whitmore followed his stare. When she saw me, her face went still. When she saw Noah, all the color drained from it. For one perfect second, Margaret looked exactly like what she was. Not powerful, not untouchable, terrified. Then the mask returned. But I had seen the crack, and this time I was not the woman being pushed out into the rain. I was the woman walking straight toward the storm. For a few seconds, the entire ballroom seemed to forget how to breathe. I could feel the silence spreading, not complete silence. Not yet. The string quartet still played near the front of the room. Silverware still clicked softly against plates. Somewhere, a woman gave a nervous little laugh, then stopped when no one joined her. But beneath all of that, something had shifted. People knew. Maybe not the whole story. Maybe not the truth. But they knew enough to understand that my presence meant trouble. Claire Bennett had returned, and she had not returned alone. Noah stood beside me, his small hand wrapped around mine, Rex the stuffed dinosaur tucked beneath his other arm. He looked around the ballroom with wide eyes, taking in the chandeliers, the flowers, the guests, the enormous wedding cake near the far wall. He did not understand why people were staring. Thank God for that. Across the room, Ethan still had not moved. He looked exactly like the man from my memories and nothing like him at all. 5 years had changed him. There were faint lines around his eyes now. His face was leaner. His suit was perfectly tailored, his hair neatly styled, his posture trained by wealth and expectation. But his eyes were the same, gray-blue, Noah's eyes. For one unbearable moment, father and son stared at each other across the room without knowing how to name what was passing between them. Then Noah tugged on my hand. "Mom," he whispered. "Is that him?" My throat tightened. I had prepared for this question. I had rehearsed calm answers, careful answers, answers that did not break him with too much too soon. But when the moment came, all I could do was squeeze his hand. "Yes," I said softly. "That's Ethan." Noah looked at me. "My dad?" The word landed between us like something fragile. I bent slightly, keeping my voice low. "He is your father," I said. "But remember what we talked about. We stay close. We tell the truth. And you did nothing wrong." Noah nodded. "I know." He said it with such simple certainty that something in me steadied. Yes, he knew. And maybe that was what Margaret had never understood. A child raised in love does not automatically inherit the shame adults try to place on him. Before Ethan could take a step toward us, Olivia saw me. She had been standing near the aisle, surrounded by bridesmaids in pale champagne dresses. Her wedding gown glittered under the lights, all lace, pearls, and expensive perfection. For a moment, she looked confused. Then recognition struck. Her face hardened so quickly it was almost ugly. She lifted the front of her dress and marched toward me. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. A few guests turned more openly now. Nathan moved as if to intercept her, but I shook my head slightly. "Let her come." Olivia stopped in front of me, breathing hard. "This is my wedding, I'm aware. You have no right to be here. I was invited." Her eyes flashed toward Nathan. "By him." Nathan stepped forward. "Yes." Olivia stared at him as if he had slapped her. "Nathan, what the hell is going on?" His voice stayed calm. "We need to talk before the ceremony." "No," Olivia snapped. "We are not doing this now. Not with her here." I almost smiled. 5 years had passed, but Olivia had not changed as much as she thought. She was still the girl at the dinner table, looking at me like I was a stain someone else should clean up. Only now, the stain had walked back into the room with proof. Margaret arrived before anyone else could speak. She did not rush. Even now, even with fear tightening the skin around her eyes, she moved with controlled elegance. Her silver gown shimmered as she crossed the floor. Her diamond necklace caught the light. A queen approaching a threat. "Claire," she said. My name sounded exactly as it had 5 years ago, cold, small, unwelcome. "Margaret," I replied. Her gaze flicked to Noah, just once, then away, as if looking too long might make him real. "This is a private family event," she said. I tilted my head. "Funny. I remember you saying I wasn't family." A murmur moved through the guests close enough to hear. Margaret's smile tightened. "This is neither the time nor the place." That's what people say when the time and place finally stop belonging to them. Her eyes sharpened. Olivia turned toward Margaret. "Mom, tell security to remove her." Noah moved closer to my side. My hand rested gently on his shoulder. Margaret noticed, her voice lowered. "You should not have brought the boy." "The boy, not Noah, not my grandson, not even the child. The boy," I looked at her. "I brought my son." "Your son," she said quietly. "Careful, Margaret." Her mouth curved. "Still dramatic, I see." "No," I said, "just done being polite to people who destroyed my life." Ethan finally reached us. He stopped a few feet away as if there were an invisible line between us. He no longer had the right to cross. His eyes went immediately to Noah. Up close, the resemblance became impossible to ignore. Noah's hair, Noah's eyes, the slight crease between his brows as he studied Ethan, the same crease Ethan had when he was trying not to show emotion. Ethan looked like he might collapse. "Claire," he whispered. I faced him fully. "Ethan." His name felt strange in my mouth after all those years. Too familiar, too far away. His gaze dropped again to Noah. "Noah," he said, barely breathing the name. My son looked at him carefully. "Hi." That one small word broke something in Ethan. I saw it happen. His face crumpled slightly, then he fought to recover. His hand lifted, almost the same way it had lifted in the Whitmore living room 5 years before. Almost reaching. Almost brave. This time, I did not wait for Margaret to stop him. I took a step back with Noah. Ethan's hand fell. Pain crossed his face. Good, I thought, then immediately hated myself for it. Not because he did not deserve pain, because I did not want to become someone who needed it. "Claire," he said, voice shaking. "What is this?" "This," I said, "is what you refuse to see." Margaret cut in. "Enough, Ethan, do not let her manipulate you." I laughed softly. The sound made Margaret look at me with open dislike. "Manipulate him?" I said. "You mean the way you did?" Her eyes went cold. "You are making a spectacle of yourself." "No," Nathan said from behind her. "Actually, we're trying to prevent one." Olivia turned on him. "Then why did you invite her?" "Because your family has unfinished business that affects mine." "My wedding is not business." "No," Nathan said, "but marriage is a foundation, and I won't build mine on buried lies." Olivia's face changed. For the first time, she looked less angry and more afraid. "What lies?" Margaret turned sharply. "Nathan, I suggest you choose your next words carefully." Dr. Samuel Harris stepped forward then. He had remained near the edge of the group, holding a leather folder, watching Margaret the way a man watches a door he knows has been locked from the inside. "I should have chosen my words carefully 5 years ago," he said, "but today I intend to choose them truthfully." Margaret's face paled beneath her makeup. Ethan looked at him. "Dr. Harris?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, Ethan. I supervised the original DNA testing process involving you, Claire, and the child." Olivia looked completely lost now. "Wait, what DNA test?" Guests were no longer pretending not to listen. The whispering spread outward. "DNA test. Claire, Ethan, the child." Margaret's smile became rigid. "This is a private matter. It became a public matter," I said, "the moment you used that lie to destroy me in front of this family." Margaret stepped closer, her voice low enough that only we could hear. "You should have stayed gone." There it was. No silk, no performance. Just the truth of who she was. I looked at her and remembered the rain, the iron gates, Ethan at the window, Noah's newborn hand curled against my collarbone. For 5 years I had thought of all the things I would say if I ever stood in front of Margaret again. I had imagined rage. I had imagined accusation. But now that she was there, inches from me, I felt strangely calm. "I did stay gone," I said. "For 5 years. I built a life, raised my son, learned how to breathe without this family's permission." Her eyes flicked again to Noah. "Then why come back?" "Because you don't get to keep what you stole." Margaret's lips barely moved. "You have no idea what I can still do." I smiled, and for the first time I saw uncertainty in her face. "You already did your worst," I said. "I survived." Before she could respond, a voice from behind us interrupted. "Good Lord." Everyone turned. An elderly woman stood near a table of framed family photographs that had been arranged for the wedding. She was one of Margaret's old friends, a woman I vaguely remembered from charity events years ago. Her hand hovered over one photograph, a childhood picture of Ethan. He could not have been more than 5 or 6 in it. Dark blonde hair, gray-blue eyes, navy blazer, serious little frown. The woman looked from the photograph to Noah, then back again. "My God," she said softly, "that boy looks exactly like Ethan at that age." The words passed through the room like electricity. Noah looked at the photograph too. His eyes widened. "Mom," he said, "that kid looks like me." Ethan stared at the picture, then at Noah. I saw the last layer of denial crack in his face. Margaret moved quickly toward the elderly woman. "Patricia," she said too brightly, "perhaps we should let the children handle their emotions privately." Patricia looked confused. "Margaret, I only meant—" "I know what you meant." Her tone made Patricia fall silent, but it was too late. The room had seen. Sometimes truth does not need a document first. Sometimes it begins with a face. Nathan stepped toward Olivia. "We need to move this conversation somewhere private before the ceremony starts." Olivia looked at him, then at me, then at Noah. Her voice trembled with anger. "You brought her here to ruin my wedding." No, Nathan said. I brought her here because your mother may have ruined her life. Olivia recoiled. Margaret snapped. That is an outrageous accusation. Dr. Harris opened his folder. It is more than an accusation. Margaret's eyes locked onto the folder. There. That was the second crack. The first had been Noah's face. The second was paper. Margaret understood paper. She trusted paper when she controlled it. Now paper had come back to threaten her. Ethan saw the folder too. What is that? He asked. Dr. Harris looked at him with something like pity. The original records. The ballroom seemed to tilt. Ethan's voice dropped. Original records of what? The DNA test, Dr. Harris said. The one you were shown 5 years ago was not the original result. Ethan stopped breathing. At least that was how it looked. His chest went still. His eyes fixed on the folder. The color drained from his face until he looked almost gray. No, he whispered. The word was not denial. It was fear. Margaret stepped between him and Dr. Harris. This is absurd. Samuel, I don't know what you think you found, but this is neither appropriate nor reliable. Dr. Harris's expression hardened. My signature was forged, Margaret. The guests closest to us gasped. Olivia's mouth fell open. Nathan looked at his father, then at Margaret. Ethan whispered. Forged? Margaret's voice sharpened. You are confused. No, Dr. Harris said. For 5 years, I thought perhaps there had been a clerical mistake buried in the lab transition. But the recovered metadata, chain of custody records, and archived raw data are clear. The report Claire was shown was altered after my review. My fingers tightened around my purse. There it was. Not from me. Not from a desperate ex-wife. Not from a poor woman accused of chasing money. From the doctor whose name had been used to sell the lie. Margaret looked around and realized too many people were listening. Her control snapped back into place with terrifying speed. This conversation ends now, she said. No, I replied. Everyone looked at me. I reached into my purse and took out the sealed envelope, the fake DNA test, the one I had kept for 5 years. My hand did not shake as I held it up. This is the report you used to throw me out of your house, I said. Then I reached into my purse again and pulled out the certified copy Nathan had given me. And this is the report your money could not erase. Ethan looked at the papers like they were weapons. Maybe they were. Margaret's breathing changed, only slightly, but I heard it. Olivia whispered, Mom? Margaret did not answer. Nathan stepped toward the side corridor. We need to continue this in the private family room, now. Olivia looked furious, humiliated, terrified. But the ceremony. Nathan's voice softened but did not bend. There cannot be a ceremony until I know who I'm marrying. That wounded her. I saw it. For the first time, I almost felt sorry for Olivia. Almost. She had spent years believing she was separate from the cruelty her mother directed at me, but cruelty is never contained. Eventually, it leaks into every room. Margaret turned toward Nathan. You are making a mistake. Nathan looked directly at her. No, Margaret, I'm trying to find out if I already made one. The silence that followed was brutal. Guests stared openly now. Someone's phone was halfway raised before another guest pulled it down. Dr. Harris closed his folder. The private room, he said. Now. Ethan looked at me. For the first time in 5 years, he looked like he understood that everything he had believed was beginning to collapse. Claire, he said, voice barely audible, please. I did not know what he was asking for. Forgiveness, confirmation, mercy, a way out. I gave him none of it. I looked down at Noah instead. He was watching Ethan carefully, not scared, just thoughtful. Mom, he whispered, is the truth happening? My heart twisted. I knelt in front of him. Yes, I said softly. It is. Do I have to go in there? I looked toward the private corridor, then at Margaret, then at Ethan. No, I said. You don't have to hear everything. Rachel had offered to come, my parents had begged, but I had chosen to come with Noah and no one else because I did not want an army. Now suddenly, I wished I had someone to shield him from the rest. Nathan seemed to understand. He turned to a woman near the entrance, one of his cousins, I guessed. Emily, can you sit with Noah in the lobby for a few minutes? The woman stepped forward kindly. Of course. I looked at Noah. She's with Nathan's family. I'll be right there in that room. You can see the door. Noah studied Emily. Then he held up Rex. Can Rex come? Emily smiled gently. I would be honored. Noah looked at me. You'll come back? I cupped his face. Always. He nodded. Then he surprised me by turning to Ethan. Are you coming too? Ethan looked like the question physically hurt. He crouched slowly, keeping a careful distance. Yes, he said, voice breaking. I am. Noah tilted his head. Okay, just okay. No accusation, no demand, no understanding of the 5 years Ethan had missed. That innocence was more devastating than anger could ever be. Emily led Noah toward the lobby, and I watched until he sat on a velvet bench just outside the ballroom doors, Rex on his lap. Only then did I turn back. Margaret was watching me. Her eyes were cold again. But there was fear beneath the cold now. Real fear. Because the lie had left the safety of her mansion. It had entered a ballroom. It had found witnesses. And it was walking toward a private room with documents in hand. Nathan opened the door to the family room. Olivia went in first, wiping angry tears from her cheeks. Dr. Harris followed, then Ethan. Margaret paused at the doorway and looked at me. This will not end the way you think, she said quietly. I stepped closer. For once, Margaret, I said, you don't get to write the ending. Then I walked past her into the room. The family room behind the ballroom was smaller than I expected. After all the white roses, chandeliers, and polished performance outside, the room felt almost plain. Cream walls, a long mahogany table, a few upholstered chairs, a mirror above the fireplace, a tray of untouched champagne glasses on a sideboard. It was probably meant for the bride to rest before the ceremony. Instead, it became the room where the Whitmore family's most carefully buried lie began to rot in the open air. Olivia stood near the window, one hand pressed against her mouth, her wedding veil trembling slightly around her shoulders. Nathan stood beside the table with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. Dr. Samuel Harris placed his leather folder carefully in front of him. Ethan remained near the door, as if he had entered the room but not yet accepted what was happening inside it. Margaret chose the chair at the head of the table. Of course she did. Even accused, even cornered, she still moved like a woman who believed every room belonged to her. I stayed standing. Margaret noticed. "You may sit, Claire," she said. I looked at her. I spent enough time sitting quietly in rooms where you controlled the conversation. Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Nathan closed the door. The click sounded final. For a moment, no one spoke. The distant sound of the wedding continued outside. Muffled music, soft voices, the occasional laugh from guests who did not yet know the ceremony had already begun in another form. A trial without a judge. Dr. Harris opened the folder. "I will explain this as clearly as I can," he said. Margaret gave a cold little laugh. "Samuel, you are embarrassing yourself." He looked at her with calm disappointment. "No, Margaret, I embarrassed myself 5 years ago when I allowed uncertainty to keep me silent." That landed. Not on Margaret, on me. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to remain still. Dr. Harris removed several documents and laid them across the table. There were 2 reports connected to the paternity test involving Ethan Whitmore, Claire Bennett, and Noah Bennett Whitmore. Ethan flinched at Noah's full name. Dr. Harris continued. The first report was generated from the original lab data. It showed that Ethan Whitmore could not be excluded as the biological father. Ethan took a step forward. "What does that mean?" Dr. Harris looked at him directly. "It means Noah is your son." The words entered the room quietly. No dramatic music, no thunder, no applause, just a sentence I had been carrying alone for 5 years. "Noah is your son." Ethan's face twisted as if he had been struck. He reached for the back of a chair to steady himself. Olivia whispered, "No." Nathan looked at her, not cruelly, but he did not comfort her either. Margaret sat perfectly still, too still. Dr. Harris slid the certified copy across the table toward Ethan. "This is the original data summary, sample numbers, collection dates, genetic markers, and the conclusion. The probability of paternity was 99.998%. Ethan stared at the page. His eyes moved across the numbers, but I could tell he was not really reading them. He was looking for a way for them not to be true. Not because he did not want Noah, because if Noah was his son, then Ethan had to face what he had done. His hand shook as he picked up the paper. "Why didn't I see this?" he asked. No one answered immediately. Because everyone in the room knew the answer had a name, Margaret. Dr. Harris placed a second document on the table. "This is the report Claire was shown 5 years ago. The final page was altered. The conclusion was replaced. My confirmation signature was forged." Olivia turned toward her mother. "Mom?" Margaret did not look at her. Instead, she looked at Dr. Harris. "You are making very serious accusations based on old files." "Yes," Dr. Harris said, "I am. Files can be corrupted. They can. Records can be misread. They can. People can remember incorrectly." Dr. Harris nodded once. "They can." Margaret leaned back slightly as if she had scored a point. Then Dr. Harris said, "That is why I brought more than memory." Nathan opened his own folder and removed a printed timeline. He placed it beside the reports. "We have the original sample intake log," Nathan said. "Noah's sample was collected at 10:42 a.m. on May 17th. Claire signed the custody form. The technician signed it. The sample ID matches the original report." I remembered that morning. The glass building. The private lab. Noah crying when the swab touched his cheek. Margaret's phone call behind me. My stomach tightened. Nathan continued. "Ethan's sample was submitted separately 2 days later through private courier." Ethan looked up. "I remember that." "So do I said. His eyes moved to me, full of pain. I did not look away. Nathan pointed to the timeline. "That separate submission is where the first irregularity appears." Margaret's voice sharpened. "This is absurd." Nathan ignored her. "The courier entry was modified after submission. The digital log shows an access event from an administrative account not assigned to the handling technician." Olivia frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means someone accessed the record who should not have." Margaret stood. "This is speculation." "No," Dr. Harris said. "Speculation is what destroyed Claire's marriage. This is documentation." The room went still. Margaret looked at him with pure hatred then. Not irritation. Not fear. Hatred. For 1 second she forgot to hide it. Ethan saw it. I knew he did because his face changed. A crack appeared in the image he had carried of his mother. Small, but real. Dr. Harris reached into the folder again. "This is a copy of the final approval record." He placed another page down. "The signature at the bottom is supposed to be mine." Ethan leaned closer. "Supposed to be?" "Yes, it is not my signature." Margaret scoffed. "Handwriting analysis now? Really, Samuel?" Nathan said. "Not just handwriting." He removed a second sheet. "We had a forensic document examiner compare the signature to Dr. Harris's verified signatures from the same period. The forged signature has different pressure patterns, spacing, and letter formation." Olivia looked overwhelmed. "Nathan, when did you do all this?" "When I realized the family I was marrying into might have destroyed a woman and a child to protect its image." Olivia recoiled. "That's not fair." Nathan's voice softened, but his eyes did not. "No, Olivia, what happened to Claire was not fair." She looked at me then. Really looked at me, not as the woman who had interrupted her wedding, not as the scandal she had mocked years ago, as a person. It lasted only a second, but I saw it. Margaret saw it too. and she hated it. She turned to Olivia. "Do not let them manipulate you on your wedding day." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "My wedding day?" she whispered. "Mom, did you know?" Margaret did not answer. That was answer enough. Ethan lowered himself slowly into a chair. The true report was still in his hand. He looked at it like it was burning him. 5 years, he whispered. His voice was barely audible. I heard it anyway. "Yes," I said. He looked up at me. My throat tightened, but I refused to soften the truth for him. 5 years, I repeated. 5 birthdays, 5 Christmas mornings, 5 Father's Day cards he didn't know where to send. Ethan closed his eyes. No, yes. His hand covered his mouth. I saw his shoulders shake once. Margaret's voice cut in, cold and sharp. "Do not perform grief now, Ethan. You acted reasonably based on the information available." I turned on her. "No, he acted weakly based on the lie you gave him." Margaret's chair scraped back. "I will not be spoken to like this. You should be grateful I'm only speaking." The room froze. For 5 years, I had swallowed rage because I had a child to feed, rent to pay, a life to rebuild. I had folded it into grocery lists, bedtime stories, parent-teacher meetings, and subway rides. But in that room, with the true report on the table and Ethan finally breaking under the weight of his own choices, the rage stood up inside me. "You held my newborn son and looked at him like he was a problem to solve," I said. "You had me followed. You planted doubt in your son's mind. You waited until I was exhausted, bleeding, and vulnerable, and then you used a forged piece of paper to throw me out in the rain." Margaret's mouth tightened. "You have always had a flair for melodrama." "No," I said. "You just prefer your victims quiet." Nathan looked at Margaret. "There's more." For the first time, Margaret's control visibly faltered. Her eyes snapped to him. "What do you mean?" Nathan removed a smaller envelope from his folder. "My father could prove the report was altered, but he could not prove who ordered it, not alone." Ethan looked up. "What is that?" Nathan opened the envelope and took out printed screenshots. 3 months ago, when my father began asking questions, a former administrative assistant from the Whitmore family office contacted me." Margaret went pale. Not slightly, not elegantly, pale. Olivia saw it and whispered, "Mom." Nathan placed the screenshots on the table. She said she had kept copies of certain communications because she was afraid she would be blamed if the situation ever came to light. Margaret's voice was suddenly low. "You have no right to bring disgruntled former employees into this." Nathan continued as if she had not spoken. "Her name is Andrea Mills. She worked for the Whitmore family office 5 years ago." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Andrea? You remember her?" Nathan asked. "She left suddenly," Ethan said. "Mom said she had personal issues." Margaret said nothing. Nathan pointed to the first screenshot. "This is a message sent from Margaret's private assistant account to Andrea Mills 2 days before the final DNA report was delivered." He read it aloud. "Confirm that the revised summary replaces the original before delivery. No digital copies should be visible to Ethan." The room went utterly silent. Ethan stood so quickly his chair slid backward. "What?" Margaret's voice cracked like a whip. "That is fabricated." Nathan looked at her. "I expected you to say that." He placed another document down. "So I also brought the email header analysis. Server logs confirm the message originated from your assistant account on the Whitmore private network." Margaret's eyes flashed. "Assistant accounts are accessible by staff." "Yes," Nathan said, "which is why Andrea also provided this." He laid down another screenshot, a text message. This one had no polished corporate language, just a short, brutal command. "Make sure the result says what I need it to say." Ethan must not see the first version. Olivia began to cry, not loudly. A small, shocked sound escaped her throat as she backed away from the table. Ethan stared at the message, then at Margaret. His voice was almost unrecognizable. "Tell me that isn't yours." Margaret looked at him. For a moment I thought she might deny it. She had denied everything else. But something about Ethan's face stopped her. Maybe because, for the first time in his life, he was not looking at her like a son begging for direction. He was looking at her like a man seeing a monster. Margaret inhaled slowly. "I did what was necessary." The sentence fell into the room like a body. Olivia covered her mouth. Nathan's expression hardened. Dr. Harris lowered his eyes. Ethan did not move. I felt the air leave my lungs. Not because I was surprised. I had known. I had always known. But knowing something alone is different from hearing the person who destroyed you admit it in front of witnesses. Ethan's voice shook. "Necessary?" Margaret straightened. "Yes." "For what?" "To protect you." Ethan stared at her. "From my wife, from a woman who was using you." I laughed. A cold, humorless laugh. Margaret turned to me. "Do not pretend innocence. You were never right for this family." "There it is," I said softly. Her eyes burned. "You came from nothing." "Mom," Olivia whispered. Margaret did not stop. "You walked into our home with your simple dresses and your modest little job and your wounded little pride, and suddenly my son was ready to throw away everything this family built." Ethan looked sick. "I loved her. You were infatuated." "She was my wife. She was a mistake." The room went silent. For years I had imagined Margaret saying something like that, but it still hurt. Not because I believed her, because once I had tried so hard to make her see me as human. Ethan stepped toward his mother. "And Noah?" he asked. Margaret's face tightened. "He would have tied you to her forever." Ethan flinched as if she had slapped him. "He was my son." Margaret's voice rose. "He was a baby you could not even be sure was yours. You made sure I couldn't be sure." The force of Ethan's shout shook the room. I had never heard him speak to her that way. Neither had Margaret. She stared at him, stunned. Ethan's chest rose and fell. "You made me abandon my son." Margaret's eyes glistened, but they were not soft, they were furious. I saved you. No, he said. You destroyed me. That was the moment Margaret lost him. Not completely, maybe. Blood and fear do not release people easily, but something essential broke. The boy who had frozen when his mother said his name 5 years ago was gone. In his place stood a man drowning in the consequences of his own silence. He turned to me. The apology was already in his eyes. I did not want it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Claire, he said, voice breaking. I lifted one hand. Don't. He stopped. Tears ran down his face. I didn't know. No, I said. You didn't want to know. He looked like the words cut him open. Good. They should. You had my face, I continued. You had my voice. You had the woman you claimed to love standing in front of you with your newborn son, and you chose a piece of paper because it was easier than choosing me. Ethan lowered his head. You're right. I hated how much I had once needed to hear that. I hated that it came too late. Margaret recovered enough to speak again. You are all being emotional. This information has no place at Olivia's wedding. Olivia looked at her mother through tears. My wedding? She said. You're still talking about my wedding? Margaret turned toward her. Olivia, darling. No. Olivia stepped back. Don't darling me. Margaret's face tightened. Olivia's voice trembled. You let me hate her. I looked at Olivia. She was crying openly now, mascara gathering beneath her eyes. You told me she cheated. You told me she trapped Ethan. You told me her baby was proof she was disgusting. Margaret said nothing. Olivia pressed a hand to her chest. I repeated that. I believed you. I treated her like she was dirt. For the first time, Olivia looked directly at me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I did not answer. I was not ready to accept apologies like loose change thrown after a theft. Nathan placed his hand gently on Olivia's arm. She did not pull away, but she did not lean into him either. Everything had changed between them too. That was the thing about truth. It did not return only what was stolen. It revealed what had been built from stolen things. Nathan looked at Margaret. There will be legal consequences. Margaret's face went hard. For whom? For whoever forged medical documentation, interfered with lab records, and used falsified results to damage Claire and Noah. Margaret laughed softly. Do you think you can frighten me with legal language? Nathan's voice was quiet. No, I think evidence can. Dr. Harris nodded. I have already prepared a formal statement. If Claire chooses to pursue this, I will cooperate fully. Everyone looked at me. There it was. The question waiting beneath everything. What would I do? Would I sue? Would I expose them publicly? Would I demand money? Would I demand a name? Would I demand that Ethan fall to his knees? For 5 years, I had imagined justice as something loud, but in that room justice felt quieter. It felt like breath returning to my body. It felt like no longer being the only person who knew the truth. I looked at Margaret. She was watching me carefully now. Not with contempt, with calculation. Still searching for the angle. Still searching for the weakness. So I gave her none. I'm not deciding anything in this room, I said. Ethan looked up. Margaret's eyes narrowed. I continued. For 5 years, decisions were made about my life behind closed doors. Not anymore. I'll speak to my lawyer. I'll protect my son. And I'll decide what happens next without asking permission from anyone named Whitmore. Margaret's lips parted slightly. For once, she had no immediate answer. Nathan nodded. That is your right. I picked up the true DNA report from the table and placed it back into my purse. Then I picked up the fake one. I looked at it one last time. This paper had been a cage, a weapon, a sentence. For 5 years, it had carried more power than my voice. Now it was only paper. I tore it in half. The sound was small, but everyone heard it. Then I tore it again and again, until the false result lay in pieces on Margaret Whitmore's perfect mahogany table. Ethan watched with tears in his eyes. Margaret stared at the torn paper as if I had struck her. Maybe I had. I looked at her and said, That is all your lie is worth now. No one spoke. Then from outside the room there was a soft knock. The door opened slightly and Emily, Nathan's cousin, looked in. I'm sorry, she said. Noah is asking for his mom. The entire room changed, because after all the documents, accusations, confessions, and legal threats, there was still a little boy outside with a stuffed dinosaur waiting for me. My son. The only reason any of this mattered. I walked to the door. Ethan moved as if to follow, then stopped himself. For once, he understood he did not have the right. I opened the door and saw Noah sitting on the velvet bench in the lobby, swinging his feet. Rex was on his lap. His suit jacket was slightly wrinkled. His tie had shifted sideways. When he saw me, he jumped down. Mom. I knelt, and he ran into my arms. I held him tightly. Too tightly, maybe. But he did not complain. Are you okay? He asked. I closed my eyes. Children should not have to ask their mothers that. But mine did, so I answered honestly. I'm getting there. He pulled back and studied my face. Did the truth happen? I looked over his shoulder. Through the open doorway, I could see Ethan standing in the family room, watching us with the expression of a man who had just discovered the shape of everything he lost. Margaret sat behind him, silent and pale. I looked back at Noah. Yes, I said. The truth happened. He nodded seriously. Good. Then he looked past me toward the room. Is he still my dad? The question was soft, simple, devastating. I touched his cheek. Yes, sweetheart, he is. Noah considered this. Does he know now? I felt tears burn behind my eyes. Yes, I whispered. He knows now. Noah looked toward Ethan. Ethan took one step forward, then stopped, waiting. For once, waiting was the right thing. Noah did not run to him. He did not hide either. He simply stood beside me, holding Rex, looking at the man who had missed the first 5 years of his life. Then he asked, Why is he crying? I looked at Ethan, then at Margaret, then at the torn pieces of the fake test scattered on the table behind them. Because, I said, sometimes people don't understand what they lost until the truth gives it back too late. Noah leaned against my side. I put my arm around him. Behind us, inside the family room, Olivia whispered something to Nathan. Ethan wiped his face. Margaret remained silent. But outside, beyond the lobby, the wedding guests were waiting. The ballroom was full. The ceremony had not begun, and the Whitmore family's secret was no longer contained by one closed door. Nathan stepped out behind me, his expression grave. "Claire," he said quietly, "there are people asking questions." I looked toward the ballroom entrance. Of course they were. Guests had seen enough to know something was wrong. They had heard names, fragments, accusations. They had watched the bride disappear, the groom follow, the mother of the bride turn pale, and a child who looked exactly like Ethan Whitmore sit outside with a stuffed dinosaur. Margaret appeared in the doorway behind Nathan. Her voice returned, low and controlled. "We will say there has been a family emergency. The ceremony will be delayed." I looked at her. Even now, even after everything, she still wanted a statement, a version, a cover. "No," I said. Her eyes locked on mine. "No?" I stood, holding Noah's hand. "You don't get to tell another lie to clean up the first one." Margaret's face hardened. "You cannot possibly intend to drag this into the ballroom." I looked at Ethan. He looked back at me. For the first time, he did not look away. Then I looked at Nathan. "This is your wedding," I said. "Your choice." Nathan turned toward Olivia, who had stepped out of the room behind him, pale and shaken in her wedding dress. Olivia wiped her cheeks. For once, she looked nothing like a spoiled princess. She looked like a daughter whose mother had burned down the house and handed her the matches. Nathan asked softly, "Olivia?" She stared toward the ballroom, toward all the guests, toward the perfect wedding Margaret had built. Then she looked at her mother. "No more lies," Olivia said. Margaret inhaled sharply. "Olivia, no," Olivia said, stronger this time. "No more." And that was when I knew the truth was not finished. It had left the papers, it had entered the family. Now it was heading back into the ballroom. When we stepped back toward the ballroom, the music had stopped. That was the first thing I noticed. No violins, no soft piano, no carefully chosen wedding melody floating through the air. Just voices, low whispers, nervous laughter, the sound of hundreds of people trying to pretend they were not waiting for disaster. Olivia walked first. She was still wearing her wedding dress, but she no longer looked like a bride about to begin the happiest day of her life. Her veil had slipped slightly, her eyes were red. One hand gripped the side of her gown as if the lace itself were the only thing keeping her upright. Nathan walked beside her, not touching her, but close enough that she knew he was there. Dr. Harris followed with the documents in his hand, then Ethan, then Margaret, then me. And Noah held my hand. The moment we entered the ballroom, every conversation died. It was not gradual this time. It was instant. The guests turned toward us as if a curtain had lifted and they had been waiting for the next act. Margaret saw them all watching. I saw her try to become herself again. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted, her expression smoothed into something controlled, wounded, and dignified. She had worn that face for decades. The face of a woman who could turn cruelty into grace if the lighting was flattering enough. She moved toward the front of the room. "I apologize for the interruption," she said, her voice carrying with practiced ease. "There has been a private family matter, and we will need a brief delay before the ceremony continues." A private family matter. I almost laughed. Even now, she reached for the cleanest lie available. But Olivia stepped forward. "No." One word. Soft but clear. The ballroom froze again. Margaret turned slowly. "Olivia." The warning in her voice was unmistakable. Olivia flinched. For a second, I thought she would shrink back into the daughter Margaret had trained her to be. Then Nathan looked at her, not pushing, not rescuing, just waiting. Olivia inhaled shakily and faced the guests. "There won't be a ceremony right now," she said. A wave of murmurs moved through the room. Margaret's face tightened. "Darling, you are upset. You do not need to explain anything." Olivia turned on her. "That's what you always say when you want to decide the explanation yourself." A few guests gasped. Margaret's eyes flashed. "Enough." "No," Olivia said. "It is enough. It should have been enough years ago." The room became so quiet I could hear Noah breathing beside me. He looked up at me. "Is she mad?" he whispered. "Yes," I whispered back, "but not at you." He nodded and held Rex tighter. Ethan stepped forward. His face was pale. His eyes were swollen from crying, but something about him had changed since the private room. He no longer looked like a man waiting for permission to feel. He looked like a man standing in the wreckage of all the permission he had once accepted. He faced the ballroom. "I need to say something," he said. Margaret snapped, "Ethan, do not." He closed his eyes briefly. 5 years ago, that would have stopped him. His mother's voice, his name, the command hidden inside concern, but this time he opened his eyes and kept speaking. 5 years ago, my wife, Claire Bennett, was accused of having an affair. The whispering began again, louder now. Ethan's voice shook, but he did not stop. A DNA test was presented to me. It said that I was not the biological father of her newborn son. He looked at Noah. His voice broke on the next word. "Noah." Noah stared at him, serious and still. Ethan swallowed hard. "I believed that test." The sentence seemed to cost him something. Good. Truth should cost people when they arrive late to it. "I believed it, even though Claire told me it was wrong," Ethan continued. "I believed it even though she begged me to look at her, to trust her, to remember who she was." He looked toward me. I did not soften my face for him. He looked away, accepting that. "I let her leave my home in the rain with a newborn baby in her arms." A collective sound moved through the guests. Shock, disgust, recognition. Some people turned toward Margaret, others turned toward me. I felt those eyes. 5 years ago, I would have wanted to disappear beneath them. Now I stood still. Let them look, I thought. Let them finally see the right thing. Ethan's voice dropped. Today, I learned that the test was falsified. The ballroom erupted, not loudly at first. It began as gasps, whispers, chairs shifting, hands covering mouths. Then someone said, "Falsified?" Another voice asked, "Who would do that?" Ethan turned toward Margaret. He did not need to answer with words. Everyone followed his gaze. Margaret stood near the aisle, silver gown gleaming beneath the chandeliers, face hard as stone. For the first time in my life, I saw Margaret Whitmore surrounded by people and completely alone. She lifted her chin. "My son is in shock," she said. "He is speaking from emotional distress." Nathan stepped forward. "No, he's speaking from evidence." Margaret's eyes cut to him. Nathan turned to the guests. "I am Nathan Harris, Olivia's fiancé. My father, Dr. Samuel Harris, supervised the original genetic testing process 5 years ago. He has confirmed that the report shown to Claire and Ethan was altered after his review, and that his signature was forged." More gasps. A man near the front stood halfway from his chair. "Are you saying there was a crime?" Nathan did not hesitate. "Yes." Margaret's mouth tightened. "Careful, Nathan." He looked at her. "I am being careful. That is why I'm using the word evidence." Dr. Harris stepped beside him. His voice was not loud, but it carried the authority Margaret no longer had. The original data showed that Ethan Whitmore was Noah's biological father. The report Claire was shown was not the report produced from the genetic data. A woman near the back whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "That poor child." Poor child. My hand tightened around Noah's. I hated the pity in that phrase, not because pity was cruel, because it was small. Noah was not poor anything. He was strong. He was loved. He had survived being erased before he was old enough to know someone had tried. Margaret looked around the room, calculating. I could almost see her searching for the old pathways. Influence, fear, loyalty, money. But people were pulling away from her now, not physically but socially. Eyes that once admired her now measured her. People who once envied the Whitmore name now wondered what else it had hidden. That was the beginning of her punishment. Not prison, not lawsuits, not yet. Just the room believing someone else. Margaret turned to me, and for one brief poisonous moment I saw her hatred stripped bare. "You wanted this," she said. The whole ballroom heard. I looked at her. "No," I said. "You created this. I only stopped carrying it quietly." Olivia covered her mouth and began crying again. Nathan turned toward her. "Olivia," he said softly. She shook her head. "I don't even know what to say." Margaret immediately shifted toward her daughter. "Say nothing. You are overwhelmed. We will go upstairs, fix your makeup, and continue with the ceremony later." Olivia stared at her. It was almost childlike the way she looked at Margaret then, as if she were seeing her mother and losing her at the same time. "Continue?" Olivia whispered. "Yes," Margaret said. "Do not let Claire ruin your wedding." Olivia's face crumpled. "Claire didn't ruin my wedding." Margaret went still. Olivia's voice rose. "You did." The words hit harder than any accusation from me ever could have, because they came from inside Margaret's kingdom. Her daughter, her golden child, the one she had dressed in pearls and raised to believe appearance mattered more than truth. Margaret stared at her. "Olivia." "No," Olivia said, sobbing now. "You lied to me. You let me hate her. You let me call a baby disgusting. You let me repeat your cruelty because I thought it was the truth." She looked at me. "I said things about you," Olivia whispered. "About Noah. I can't take them back." "No," I said quietly. "You can't." She flinched. I did not say it to punish her. I said it because forgiveness built on pretending is just another kind of lie. Olivia nodded through tears. "I know." Margaret looked between us, furious that even my refusal to comfort Olivia had more honesty than her entire defense. Then Ethan moved toward Noah, slowly, carefully, as if approaching a frightened animal. But Noah was not frightened. He was curious. Ethan stopped a few feet away and lowered himself to one knee so they were eye level. The ballroom seemed to hold its breath. "Hi, Noah," Ethan said. Noah looked at him. "Hi." Ethan's eyes filled again. "I'm Ethan." "I know," Noah said. "Mom told me." Ethan swallowed. I'm your father." Noah tilted his head. "Mom said that too." A few people in the room began to cry. I did not. I could not. I stood beside my son with one hand on his shoulder, ready to step in the moment he needed me. Ethan's voice broke. "I'm sorry." Noah looked confused. "For what?" The question destroyed him. Ethan covered his mouth with one hand, trying to hold himself together. "For not being there," he whispered. "For not knowing you." Noah thought about that. Then he asked, "Did you not know where I was?" Ethan shut his eyes. I felt the question hit everyone in the room. Children do not ask like else, not decorate pain. They go straight to the wound. Ethan opened his eyes. I should have looked harder. Noah considered this. Then he nodded slowly as if filing the information away. "You missed my dinosaur birthday." A sound escaped Ethan's throat. "I did?" "I was 4, Noah said. "There was a volcano cake." Ethan pressed his hand against his chest like he could hold the pain in place. "I'm sorry." Noah looked down at Rex. "Rex came." Ethan gave a broken little laugh through tears. "I'm glad Rex was there." Noah nodded seriously. "He's reliable." Something in the room shifted, not healed, not fixed, but softened around the child at the center of it all. Even people who had come to see a wedding were now witnessing something far more honest than vows. A man meeting the son he had abandoned. A child measuring him without bitterness because bitterness had not yet been taught. Then Margaret spoke. "Ethan, get up." The room chilled. Ethan slowly turned. Margaret's face was tight with humiliation. "You are embarrassing yourself." For a moment I thought Ethan might obey. Old fear is not easy to kill, but Noah was watching him, and maybe that mattered more than Margaret for the first time in Ethan's life. Ethan stood, but not because she told him to. He stood between Margaret and Noah. "No," he said. Margaret blinked. The word was unfamiliar to her from him. "What did you say?" "I said no." A ripple moved through the ballroom. Ethan's voice strengthened. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. You don't get to decide what I feel. You don't get to call cruelty protection." Margaret's eyes filled with a fury that looked almost like pain. "I gave you everything. You took everything that mattered. I protected your future. You stole my son's childhood from me." The words hung between them. Margaret's face twisted. "For her," she said, pointing at me. "You are humiliating your mother for her." Ethan looked at me, then at Noah, then back at Margaret. "No," he said, "I'm telling the truth for him. For him." Noah leaned against me. I placed my hand lightly on his head. Margaret turned to the guests, desperate now, though she would have died before calling it that. "You are all seeing only a fragment of a very complex family situation." Patricia Caldwell, the elderly woman who had noticed Noah's resemblance to Ethan, stood from her seat. "No, Margaret," she said. "I think we are seeing you quite clearly." That was the third blow. A friend, a peer, a woman from her own world. Margaret looked at Patricia as if betrayal had an accent she recognized. Patricia's voice trembled, but she continued. "I remember when Claire disappeared. You told us she had disgraced the family. You told us Ethan was heartbroken because she deceived him." Margaret said nothing. Patricia looked at me. "I believed you," she said softly. "I am sorry." Other faces shifted. A man near the aisle looked down. A woman wiped her eyes. Another guest whispered, "We all believed her." That was how reputations work. One powerful lie becomes a shared convenience. Everyone benefits from not questioning it until the person destroyed by it walks back in with the truth. Margaret stepped backward, only one step, but I noticed, so did Nathan. He moved closer to Olivia. "Olivia," he said quietly, "I can't marry today." Olivia closed her eyes. The room reacted again. A broken wedding, a ruined family. Another consequence Margaret had not calculated. Olivia opened her eyes and nodded. "I know." Margaret spun toward him. "You cannot be serious." Nathan looked at her. "I have never been more serious." "This is between Claire and Ethan." "No," Nathan said. "This is between truth and every person who chooses to ignore it." Margaret's voice sharpened. "Do not moralize to me." "I'm a lawyer," Nathan said coldly. "Moralizing is what I do when the law is not yet in the room." Olivia wiped her face. "Nathan, are we over?" The question was small. Suddenly she looked young. Not spoiled, just young and scared. Nathan's expression softened. "I don't know." That hurt her. I saw it. But he continued gently. "I love you, but I need to know who you are when your mother's version of the world falls apart." Olivia looked at Margaret, then at me, then at Noah. "I don't know who I am either," she whispered. For the first time I believed her. The wedding planner appeared near the side entrance, pale and panicked. "Miss Whitmore," she said to Olivia. "The officiant is asking whether we should proceed or delay." Olivia laughed once, a strange, broken sound. "Delay?" she repeated. Then she turned to the room. "There will be no ceremony today." The ballroom erupted. Guests stood. Some whispered frantically. A bridesmaid began crying. Someone from Nathan's family gently guided an older relative back into her chair. Margaret looked like she had been slapped. "Olivia, don't do this." "No, Mom, you don't get to say that to me. Not today." "Think of what people will say." Olivia looked around the ballroom. "They're already saying it." Margaret's face hardened. "Then you will regret giving them more." Olivia shook her head. "No, I regret believing you." Silence. That one did what no document could do. It reached Margaret somewhere beneath the diamonds. For 1 second, her face looked older. Then she recovered, but not fully. Too much had been seen, too much had been heard, too much had left her control. Ethan turned toward me again. "Claire," he said, "I already knew what was coming. Apology, regret, maybe a plea." I lifted my hand slightly. "Not here." He nodded immediately. For once he accepted a boundary the first time I gave it. But then Noah tugged on my dress. "Mom?" I looked down. "Yes, baby? Can we go home now?" Home, not Greenwich, not the Langford Hotel, not the Whitmore mansion. Our small apartment above the bakery, the place with creaky floors, uneven curtains, and a dinosaur nightlight, the place we had built without them. "Yes," I said, "we can go home." Ethan heard it. I saw the pain cross his face. Good. Not because I wanted to hurt him, because he needed to understand that waiting for him to return, home had grown without him. Margaret stepped toward us. "You cannot simply leave after causing this chaos." I almost smiled. There she is. Her eyes narrowed. I held Noah's hand. "I didn't cause this chaos, Margaret. I carried it quietly for 5 years. Today I put it down." She stared at me. "You think this makes you powerful?" "No," I said. "It makes me free." The word seemed to strike her harder than anger would have, because Margaret understood power. She had built her life around it. But freedom was something else. Freedom meant I no longer needed anything she could withhold. Not approval, not money, not status, not even an apology. I turned to leave. Ethan moved half a step. "Claire," I stopped, but did not turn fully. His voice broke. "Can I see him again?" Noah looked up at me. I crouched beside him. "That's something we'll talk about later," I said. "You don't have to decide anything today." Noah looked at Ethan, then at me. "Okay." I stood. Ethan nodded, tears still on his face. "I'll wait," he said. I looked at him then. Really looked. 5 years ago, waiting had been what he did while I begged him to act. Now waiting was the only thing he had earned. "Yes," I said. "You will." Then I walked out of the ballroom with Noah beside me. This time every guest watched. But no one looked at me the way they had 5 years ago. No one looked at me like a woman being removed. They looked at Margaret. They looked at Ethan. They looked at Olivia's ruined wedding flowers and Nathan's untouched vows and the child who had exposed a dynasty simply by existing. At the doors, Noah paused and looked back. Ethan was still standing near the aisle, broken and motionless. Margaret stood behind him, diamonds bright beneath the lights, but her face hollow. Olivia sat on the edge of a chair, crying into her hands, while Nathan stood beside her, uncertain but present. Noah whispered, "That was a sad wedding." I looked at the room one last time. "Yes," I said, "it was." "Because of the truth?" I squeezed his hand. "No, sweetheart, because of what people did before the truth arrived." He thought about that as we stepped into the hallway. Outside the ballroom, the noise softened behind us. The hotel lobby was bright and calm. Guests who had not been in the ballroom moved through the space carrying shopping bags and coffee cups, unaware that a family empire had just cracked open a few rooms away. The world kept moving, just like it had 5 years ago. But this time, my life had not ended. It had returned to me. At the elevator, Noah leaned against my side. "Mom? Yes. Is Ethan sad because he missed me?" I closed my eyes for 1 second. "Yes," I said. "I think he is." Noah looked down at Rex. "Maybe he can come to my next dinosaur birthday." The kindness of children is not innocent because it is easy. It is innocent because it has not yet learned all the reasons to withhold itself. I brushed his hair back. "Maybe," I said, "but only if it's good for you." "And you?" I smiled sadly. "Yes," I said, "and me." The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside. As the doors began to close, I looked down the hallway one last time. Ethan had followed us. He stood at the far end, not close, not demanding, just watching. This time, he did not stand at a window while I disappeared into the rain. This time, he looked like he wanted to run after us, but he stayed where he was. Maybe he finally understood that regret does not give you the right to chase what you once abandoned. The elevator doors closed. Noah pressed the lobby button even though we were already going down. I laughed softly. He looked up at me. "What? Nothing," I said. "I love you." He smiled. "I know." And for the first time that day, I truly smiled too. Because the wedding had collapsed. Margaret had been exposed. Ethan had broken. Olivia had lost the perfect life she thought she was beginning. But Noah and I were still standing. And when the elevator descended, I did not feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was rising out of it. The next morning my face was everywhere, not my whole face, not clearly, but enough. A blurry photo of me leaving the Langford Hotel with Noah's hand in mine appeared on a local society blog before sunrise. By noon, the story had spread. Not all of it, not accurately. Stories like that never begin accurately. At first, the headlines were careful. Whitmore wedding abruptly cancelled after family dispute. Then they became bolder. DNA scandal rocks prominent Greenwich family. Then crueler. Mother-in-law accused of falsifying paternity test to remove son's wife. I sat at my kitchen table in Queens with my laptop closed and my coffee going cold. Noah was in the living room building a dinosaur city out of blocks, completely unaware that adults with internet access had turned our pain into a headline. Rachel sat across from me. She had arrived that morning with bagels, groceries, and the quiet determination of a woman who had once been a school counselor and therefore knew exactly how much trouble people could cause with half a truth. "You don't have to read any of it," she said. "I know." "Then stop reading it." "I already stopped." "You closed the laptop 30 seconds ago, Claire." I looked at her. She raised an eyebrow. I almost smiled. Almost. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Then another. Then a voicemail. Then an email. Reporters. Bloggers. People from old social circles who had ignored me for 5 years but suddenly remembered my name. Patricia Caldwell sent a message too. "Claire, I am deeply sorry. I believed what I was told. That does not excuse anything. If you ever want to speak, I will listen." I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Not because I hated Patricia. Because some apologies are not meant to be answered immediately. Some apologies are only the beginning of someone else realizing they failed you. That realization did not require my participation. By afternoon, Nathan called. I stepped into the bedroom and shut the door. "How bad is it?" I asked. He exhaled. "Publicly bad, privately worse." I sat on the edge of the bed. "Olivia? She's staying with a friend. And you?" "I'm at my father's place." I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry about your wedding." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry it took my wedding for the truth to come out." Neither of us spoke after that. There was nothing clean to say. Finally, Nathan continued. "My father has submitted a formal report to the appropriate authorities and licensing board. He also gave sworn statements to your attorney this morning." "My attorney?" "I assumed you would need one. I sent you 3 names. Independent, strong, no connection to the Whitmores." I looked toward the living room. Noah was making roaring sounds. "Thank you." "Claire." "Yes?" "Margaret's legal team is already preparing a statement." Of course they were. "What kind of statement?" "The kind where she expresses sadness over a painful family misunderstanding while admitting nothing." I laughed once. A dry, empty sound. "Sounds like her." "There's more." I waited. "Ethan wants to see you." My hand tightened around the phone. "No." I told him you'd say that. "Then why mention it?" "Because he asked me to tell you he won't come unless you agree. He won't show up at your apartment. He won't contact Noah directly. He says he'll wait." Wait. The word landed strangely. For years I had waited for Ethan to choose us. Now he was waiting for permission to enter a life that had grown around his absence. "Good," I said. "That's all?" "That's all." After I hung up, I stayed in the bedroom for several minutes. I looked around at the small space, the laundry basket near the closet, Noah's drawings taped crookedly to the wall, a stack of children's books on the dresser because there was never enough shelf space. This apartment had witnessed my worst nights and my strongest mornings. It had held me when no mansion would, and now somehow the Whitmores wanted to step back into it. Not literally, not yet, but through phone calls, lawyers, headlines, apologies, they wanted access. To me, to Noah, to the future they had thrown away. I walked back into the living room. Noah looked up from his blocks. Mom, can the T-Rex be mayor of the city? Yes. Is he qualified? Noah thought seriously. He has strong teeth. That's not enough for public office. Rachel laughed from the kitchen. Noah frowned. Then he can be fire chief. That seems better. He returned to his dinosaurs, satisfied. I watched him for a long moment. He was still himself. After everything, he was still himself. That became my anchor. The next few weeks passed in meetings. Lawyers, statements, phone calls, certified records, formal complaints, civil claims. I learned words I wished had never entered my life. Fraud, forgery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation, interference with medical records. There was talk of criminal investigation, though my attorney warned me not to expect anything fast. Families like the Whitmores, she said, know how to delay consequences. I nodded. I know, but delay was not escape, not anymore. Margaret's public statement came 3 days after the wedding. It was exactly what Nathan predicted. She expressed deep sadness. She referred to a painful misunderstanding. She said her only intention had ever been to protect her son during an emotionally difficult time. She did not say my name. She did not say Noah's. She did not say sorry. My attorney read it and said, good. I stared at her. Good? She's still lying carefully. That helps us. I almost laughed. Even Margaret's refusal to apologize had become evidence. The Whitmore group took a hit almost immediately. Not because people suddenly became moral overnight. They rarely do. But because scandal makes investors nervous. A hotel partnership in Manhattan was paused. A children's hospital removed Margaret's name from an upcoming donor event. 2 board members announced a review of family office practices. A society magazine that had once called Margaret Whitmore the quiet queen of Greenwich philanthropy published an article questioning how much of that quiet had been strategic. I did not celebrate. Not exactly. I had thought revenge would feel like fire. Instead, it felt like watching a building collapse from very far away. Loud, dusty, unreal. And underneath it all, there was still the same truth. No punishment could give Noah back his first steps with his father watching. No lawsuit could return the nights I cried alone while rocking him. No public disgrace could erase the moment Ethan stood at the window and let me leave. Justice could correct the record. It could not restore the years. Ethan sent 1 letter, not an email, not a text, a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with my name written by hand. I recognized his handwriting immediately. That angered me. How could something still be familiar after so much damage? I did not open it for 2 days. On the 3rd night after Noah fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and unfolded the paper. Claire, I have started this letter more times than I deserve to admit. There is no apology large enough for what I did. I keep thinking about that night. You standing in the foyer, Noah in your arms, the rain behind you. I keep thinking about the moment you told me to remember it exactly. I do. I remember everything. I remember choosing silence because I was afraid of conflict. I remember telling myself I needed time when what you needed was a husband. I remember watching you leave and believing that not stopping you was somehow different from sending you away. It wasn't. I failed you. I failed our son. I failed myself too. But that is not your burden to carry. I will not ask you to forgive me. I will not ask you to let me back into your life. I only ask for the chance, someday, and under whatever conditions you decide, to know Noah. Not as a right. Not as something owed to me. As something I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn. I am sorry. Ethan, I read the letter once, then again, then I folded it and placed it back in the envelope. I did not cry. That surprised me. 5 years earlier, those words would have split me open. Now they entered a heart that had already healed around the wound. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough. A week later, I agreed to meet Ethan. Not at my apartment, not near Noah's school, not anywhere that belonged to my life. We met in a quiet park in Brooklyn on a gray afternoon. Rachel brought Noah to a birthday party so he would not know about the meeting until I had decided what to do next. Ethan was already there when I arrived. He stood near a bench, hands in his coat pockets, looking thinner than he had at the wedding. When he saw me, he straightened. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. 2 people connected by a marriage that no longer existed, a child he barely knew, and a truth that had arrived 5 years too late. Claire, he said. Ethan. He looked like he wanted to hug me. He did not. Good. You look well, he said. I almost smiled at the awkwardness of it. I worked hard to. He nodded, absorbing the correction. We sat on opposite ends of the bench. A child rode past on a scooter. A dog barked near the path. Somewhere in the distance, traffic moved steadily, indifferent to our little tragedy. Ethan looked down at his hands. I don't know how to do this. That makes 2 of us, he nodded. I meant what I wrote. I know, his eyes lifted. But that doesn't change what happened. I know that too. There was something different in him now. Not fixed, not redeemed, just stripped. For the first time since I had known him, Ethan Whitmore looked like a man with no one left to hide behind. He took a breath. My mother has resigned from the family foundation. I looked ahead. I heard. She's fighting everything else. I expected that. She still says she protected me. Do you believe her? His answer came immediately. No. 5 years ago, that answer would have saved us. Now it was only a marker on the road after the bridge had burned. Ethan's voice trembled. I hate myself for how long it took me to say that. I did not comfort him. That was not my job anymore. He turned toward me. Can I see Noah? There it was, the real question, the only one that mattered. I took a slow breath. I won't keep him from knowing where he comes from. Hope flickered across Ethan's face. I lifted a hand slightly. But you need to understand something. You are not walking into his life as his father in the way you imagine. His face tightened with pain, but he nodded. I understand. No, Ethan, listen. He went still. Noah has a life. He has routines, friends, school, bedtime stories, favorite cereal, fears, jokes, habits. He is not an empty space waiting for you to fill it. Tears gathered in his eyes. I know. You missed the beginning. That was your choice. His jaw trembled. Yes. If you enter his life, it will be slowly, with a therapist's guidance, with legal agreements, with boundaries, with me present until I decide otherwise. Anything. Don't say that if you only mean it while you feel guilty. He flinched. I continued. Noah does not need your guilt. He needs consistency. He needs patience. He needs someone who will not disappear when things become uncomfortable. Ethan nodded, tears falling now. I can do that. I hope so. He looked at me like those 3 words hurt more than anger. Good. Hope should be cautious when it has been betrayed. Then he said the thing I had not expected. And you, I frowned. What about me? Is there any chance? He stopped, swallowed, then forced himself to continue. Is there any chance one day you could let me try to make things right with you? I looked at him. There he was, the man I had loved, the man who had failed me, the father of my child, the ghost of every promise he broke. For a moment I let myself imagine the easier ending. The dramatic apology, the tearful reunion, the family restored, the father, mother, and child walking into the sunset because the truth had repaired what the lie destroyed. But real life is not healed by revelation alone. Truth opens the door. It does not rebuild the house. No, I said softly. Ethan closed his eyes. I watched the word land, not cruelly, clearly. I don't hate you, I said, his eyes opened, wet and devastated. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. It's just true. He nodded slowly. I continued. I loved you with everything I had. And when the moment came to protect that love, you handed it to your mother and watched what she did with it. He covered his mouth, trying not to break down. I know. I forgive myself for loving you, I said. But I'm not going back to being the woman who waits for you to become brave. He looked at me for a long time. Then he whispered, You shouldn't. The fact that he agreed made me sad, but it also made me certain. We sat in silence for a while. Then I stood. I'll have my attorney contact yours about a supervised introduction with Noah. Ethan stood too. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Show up. I will. I looked at him. You have to do more than show up once. I know. No, Ethan. You have to show up when he's shy, when he's angry, when he asks hard questions, when he doesn't want to hug you, when he calls you Ethan instead of Dad, when he talks about dinosaurs for 40 minutes and you don't know what to say. A broken laugh escaped him. I'll learn, I nodded. For Noah's sake, I hope you do. Then I walked away. He did not follow. That was the first good thing he did. The first meeting between Ethan and Noah happened 3 weeks later in a child therapist's office. Noah wore his dinosaur hoodie. Ethan wore a suit, then looked embarrassed the moment he saw Noah and realized he had dressed like he was attending a board meeting instead of meeting a 5-year-old. Noah noticed too. Do you always wear work clothes? He asked. Ethan looked down at himself. I guess I do. Dinosaurs don't wear suits. No, Ethan said carefully. I guess they don't. Noah considered this. Except maybe business dinosaurs. Ethan smiled. Right. Business dinosaurs. The therapist glanced at me, trying not to smile. The meeting was awkward, tender, painful. Noah asked simple questions that cut deeply. Why didn't you come to my birthday? Did you know I like pancakes? Do you have toys at your house? Is Margaret your mom? At that last question, Ethan went very still. Yes, he said. Noah looked at me. Is she the one who lied? The room fell silent. I had not planned for him to ask that so directly, but children listen even when adults think they do not. Ethan looked at me. I nodded slightly. He turned back to Noah. Yes, he said. She lied. Noah frowned. That's bad. Yes, Ethan whispered. It is. Did you believe her? Ethan's face crumpled. Yes. Noah looked down at his dinosaur hoodie. That's bad too. Ethan's voice broke. Yes, he said. It is. Noah thought for a long moment. Then he asked, Are you going to lie? No, Ethan said. Noah looked him straight in the eyes. Mom says sorry means you stop doing the bad thing. Ethan looked at me. I looked back. He turned to Noah. Your mom is right. Noah nodded. Then he pulled a small plastic dinosaur from his pocket and placed it on the table between them. This is Steggy, he said. You can hold him, but he's not yours. Ethan stared at the dinosaur. Then he picked it up carefully, like it was made of glass. I understand, he said. I looked away, not because I was sad, because my son at 5 years old had just explained boundaries better than most adults ever could. Months passed, not easily, but honestly. Ethan showed up at first supervised visits, then short outings with me nearby, the park, the museum, a pancake place Noah loved. Ethan listened more than he talked. He learned Noah liked volcanoes, hated peas, slept with 3 stuffed animals, and thought pigeons were city chickens. He made mistakes. Many. Once he brought an expensive remote control car, and Noah ignored it for a cardboard box. Ethan looked confused until I said he likes building the world himself. The next visit, Ethan brought cardboard. That mattered. Not enough to erase the past, but enough for Noah to begin deciding who Ethan might become. Margaret never met Noah, not because she did not try. She sent a letter through her attorney requesting family reconciliation. My attorney replied with 2 sentences. Ms. Bennett declines. Do not contact the child. That was all. Margaret's legal problems grew more serious over time. The investigation moved slowly, but civil pressure did not. Andrea Mills testified. Dr. Harris cooperated. Nathan provided communications records. The lab's archived metadata confirmed the alteration. The Whitmore family settled the civil case before trial. The amount was confidential, large enough that my attorney smiled when I refused to react. I placed most of it into a trust for Noah. The rest went into expanding the family support program at the Learning Center. When Rachel heard that, she cried. You could buy a house, she said. I will. A bigger one? Eventually. And still the program? Yes. She shook her head. Claire Bennett, you are either very generous or very stubborn. Both, she smiled. Good. Olivia and Nathan did not marry that year. For a long time, I heard nothing from them. Then, almost a year after the wedding, Olivia sent me a handwritten note. Claire, I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I'm not writing to ask for it. I am writing to say that I remember what I said about you and Noah. I remember the way I looked at you. I remember choosing my mother's version of the truth because it made me feel superior. I am ashamed. Nathan and I are trying to rebuild slowly. I don't know whether we will make it, but I'm trying to become someone who does not need lies to feel safe. I hope Noah is happy. Olivia, I read it once. Then I placed it in a drawer. I did not answer. Maybe someday. Maybe not. Healing is not a public service. A year after the wedding, Noah turned 6. We had his party at a small community center near the park. The theme was volcano dinosaurs because Noah insisted those were 2 separate themes that belonged together. There were paper lava streams, dinosaur cupcakes, and a homemade volcano cake my father built with too much enthusiasm and not enough structural planning. It's leaning, my mother said. It's geological realism, my father replied. Rachel laughed so hard she had to sit down. Ethan came. Not as a guest of honor, not as dad sweeping in with gifts and tears, just Ethan. A man still learning where to stand. He arrived early and helped set up chairs. He wore jeans because Noah had told him very seriously that birthday people don't trust suits. When Noah saw him, he ran over and said, You came. Ethan crouched. I said I would. Noah studied him, then nodded. Good, you can help with lava. Ethan looked at me over Noah's shoulder. There were tears in his eyes again. This time, I looked away with something close to peace. Not forgiveness. Not exactly. Peace. Because Noah was laughing. Because Ethan had shown up. Because Margaret was not there. Because the room was full of people who loved my son without needing proof. Later, after candles and cake and presents, Noah climbed into my lap even though he was getting too big for it. Mom? He said sleepily, frosting on his shirt. Yes? Today was a good day. I kissed his hair. Yes, it was. Is Ethan part of our family now? I thought carefully. He's part of your family. Noah looked up. And you? I brushed frosting from his cheek. He's part of my past. Noah considered that with the seriousness of a tiny philosopher. Is past family? Sometimes. Is it bad? No, I said. It's just not the same as home. He leaned against me. You're home. My throat closed. I held him tighter. So are you. That night, after everyone left and Noah fell asleep surrounded by new dinosaur toys, I stood by the apartment window. The city glowed outside, not like the Whitmore mansion, not golden and guarded behind iron gates. This light was messier. Street lights, apartment windows, a bakery sign, passing headlights, ordinary light, real light. My phone buzzed, a message from Ethan. Thank you for letting me be there today. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I replied, Thank Noah. Keep showing up. A minute later, he answered, I will. This time, I did not need to believe the promise. Time would decide, and I had learned to trust time more than words. I opened Noah's trust documents next, checked one email from my attorney, then closed everything and made tea. On the kitchen table sat a framed photo from the party. Noah in the center, laughing with his mouth open. My mother beside him, my father holding the leaning volcano cake, Rachel clapping. Ethan in the background smiling cautiously, like a man grateful to be included but aware he had not earned the center. And me, standing behind Noah with my hands on his shoulders, not erased, not ashamed, not waiting to be believed. The woman in that photo was not the woman Margaret had thrown into the rain. She was not the woman Ethan had failed to protect. She was not the scandal the guests whispered about or the headline strangers clicked on. She was a mother, a survivor, a woman who had walked out of a mansion with nothing but a baby and the truth in her bones. And somehow, that had been enough. People sometimes ask whether the truth set me free. It did, but not all at once. First, the truth hurt, then it burned, then it stood beside me in rooms where people called me a liar. Then finally it opened the door, but I was the one who had to walk through. Margaret thought power meant controlling the story. Ethan thought love meant feeling guilty after failing to act. Olivia thought loyalty meant believing whatever protected her comfort. And I had once thought family meant being chosen by the people you married into. I was wrong. Family is not the house that lets you in when you are useful. Family is who comes for you in the rain. Family is who answers the phone. Family is who stays after the scandal fades, after the headlines move on, after the apologies stop sounding new. Family is the little boy who asks if you are okay and believes the truth is something worth finding. Years from now, Noah may understand more of what happened. He may be angry. He may forgive. He may not. That will be his journey. My job is not to write his feelings for him. My job is to make sure no one ever again writes a lie over his name. As for me, I never returned to the Whitmore mansion. Not once. Ethan sold it 2 years later. He told me that over coffee after one of Noah's school events. My mother fought it, he said. I'm sure she did. He smiled faintly. I thought I'd feel guilty. Do you? He looked down at his cup. No, I feel like I can breathe. I understood that better than he knew. The mansion had been beautiful, cold, perfect, rotten, a golden cage with marble floors, and I had spent too long mistaking its locked doors for proof that I did not belong. Now I knew better. Some doors close because the room behind them is too small for who you are becoming. That evening I walked home with Noah. He was 6 then, skipping cracks in the sidewalk, talking about a science project involving baking soda, vinegar, and controlled explosions. The bakery below our apartment smelled like warm bread. The stairs creaked under our feet. Our curtain was still uneven. The kitchen was still too small. And when I opened the door, Noah ran inside, dropped his backpack, and shouted, "Home!" I stood in the doorway for a second longer, just listening, just breathing. Then I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Not because I was hiding, not because I had been pushed out, because everything I needed was already there, and this time no one could take it from me.